Hello YouTube, how's everyone doing? It's Professional here. Welcome back to my playthrough of the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. And today, I think we might be on the final part of the game. We're gonna see right now. But basically, Lord Strongheart is suspected to be the Reaper of the Bailey, which pretty much everyone knows at this point that he is. And so we're bringing in Yujin Mikotoba to testify. This is gonna get crazy. Everyone knows Strongheart's guilty. We're gonna try to bring him down, see how this goes. The Resolve of Ryunosuke Naruhodo. Trial Part 3. This is gonna be the craziest trial right now, ever. Oh, what? So Dr. Seif's daughter was also brought in. Now we got 3 people in the witness stand. So witness, please state your name and occupation for the court. Yujin Mikotoba, lecturer in forensic medicine at the Imperial Yumei University in Tokyo, Japan. And Professor Mikotoba, the young lady beside you is? Ah, this is Dr. Maria Gori, Scotland Yard's practicing coroner, the daughter of Dr. Seif, I understand. Yes, Dr. Seif. I'm afraid I can't tell you why she's here. She just appeared. Appeared? What? Well, pretty much at this point, let's ask the witness, why are you here? What are you doing? She's not even saying anything. You summoned this strange Japanese man as a witness to that autopsy, but you don't summon Mama. That makes no sense. She was there too. Mama's in prison right now. Your Mama's in prison. That's about the size of it. I've had her eyes boring into the side of my cheek constantly, whilst I was in the antechamber too. And she has a knife, and okay. Poor man. The idea of it's making me shudder. The revelations about Dr. Seif that came light some days ago defiled the reputation of the entire judiciary. She was therefore deemed unfit to appear as a witness in today's proceedings. The Ministry of Justice's decision on that is final. Well, we wouldn't want any more perjury to be committed, would we? Perjury is lying to the court. The Ministry of Justice. Some questionable strings are being pulled, I think. I remember you, Dr. Mikotoba, but I certainly never expected to be meeting you under these circumstances. Yes, it's been a long while, Lord Strongheart. The prosecution understands that you were a visiting student of forensic science in London until 10 years ago. That's right. I studied under Dr. Wilson at St. Sinners. So you were present at the autopsy of my brother, Lord Clint Van Zeeks. I was, yes. I assisted Dr. Wilson with the entire procedure. Tisk. Mama is far more skilled than any Japanese man. Wow. Well, Dr. Wilson asked me to be his primary assistant on that occasion. And this autopsy report was actually penned by you, I believe. Yes. I noted all the doctor's findings, and when we were done, he read through the document and signed it. Poor Mama. As secondary assistant, she wouldn't have had such a good view of all the innards. So, Professor, do you remember Inspector Gregson? Yes, of course. If it wasn't for his insistent Lord Van Zeek's autopsy would never have happened, and we know the autopsy was manipulated, but how? But he was absolutely convinced that it would reveal decisive evidence against Genshin, you see. So Lord Strongheart had to entreat the nobility to allow it to take place. And the fact that Mikotoba was also Genshin's friend and he was doing the autopsy, this would never happen in real life. Do correct me if I'm wrong, my lord. It was a result of that autopsy that a mass murderer was apprehended and justice was done. But Gregson admitted it before he was killed. He admitted the results of the autopsy were fabricated. You were there at the time, so you must testify. You have an obligation to tell the truth about what really went on. Absolutely. That's precisely why I'm here. And that's why I'm here too. Wonder if anybody's gonna be lying. Very well then, you will give your formal testimony now, witness. Is Mikotoba really gonna lie? I can't imagine him lying. But before you begin, a word of warning. Oh? What warning? You will state truthfully and accurately what you saw and what you heard at the time. I wouldn't dream of doing otherwise, my lord. The moment your testimony verges on supposition, I will expel you from my courtroom. Remember that. I want to hear this testimony. The autopsy of Clint Van Zieks, that's Barrick's brother 10 years ago that was murdered. From my own observations, I couldn't say that there was any indication of the autopsy results having been fabricated. Death resulted from a wound made by a Western-styled sword, transfixing the heart. That I found a little strange. There were no other signs of internal injury. Nothing questionable at all. It was just a beautiful but dangerous piece of evidence removed from the man's stomach, presumed to have been swallowed by the victim as a way of posthumously identifying his assailant. He swallowed the knife? No indication, nothing to suggest fabrication. Professor Mikotoba, are you certain about that? Well, nothing that I could positively identify as such, much less swear to in testimony. This is the first time I see Lord Strongheart laughing. Well, that clears things up nicely. The only fabrication here, Asoji, has come from you. What? You claimed the inspector confessed just before his death, but that is the fabrication. No, he freely acknowledged it. I swear he did. Freely, with the tip of a sword at his throat, the man was clearly at its wit's end. The court will give no credence to this confession that was uttered in obvious desperation. Quite simply, there was nothing questionable about the investigation of Lord Clint Van Zieks' death. And with this testimony, we have, without question, uncovered the whole truth of the matter. No, we haven't. If I may, my lord, there was most certainly something questionable about it, and the whole truth does rather elude us, I feel. I beg your pardon? Well, you're obviously aware of the facts of the case. All 4 of the professor's previous victims, they died differently. Died when an enormous beast was set upon them that ripped out their throats. Exactly. The serial killer killed people with a dog. The dog would bite out their throats, but the final victim, the 5th victim, was killed with a knife. That's not the serial killer's typical way of killing. That's strange. Oh, such horrifying crimes. But curiously, the killer's last victim, Lord Clint Van Zieks, suffered a different fate. Yes, you're right. He was stabbed through the heart with a sword. That's enough. No, we have a right to cross-examine. I believe I warned you about this, witness. Well, he didn't lie. He just basically said that it's suspicious that the other deaths are different. He didn't lie. I promised to curtail your testimony as soon as it entered the realms of supposition or speculation. But, you know, that's reasonable speculation, though. Very well, my lord. In that case, the defense will pursue a conclusion to this during the cross-examination. What? I have the right to cross-examine every witness after testimony, exactly. And I fully intend to exercise that right. Oh, Ryunosuke. I'm afraid that even the presiding judge has no authority to contravene the letter of the law, as I'm sure every member of the judiciary present in the gallery would agree. He doesn't want us to cross-examine them. Very well. You may begin, counsel. However, the moment your argument strays from the established facts, I will not hesitate to bring the cross-examination to an end. Proceed with caution. Lord Strongheart should not be the judge in this. He's guilty. He's trying to rig the case in his favor. Yes, my lord. But the thing is, if Mikotoba isn't lying, what are we going to find out during the cross-examination, though? The autopsy of Clint Van Zieks. From my own observations, I couldn't say there was any indication of the autopsy results having been fabricated.
Hold it!
You couldn't say? No, sadly not. But then, you couldn't say that there wasn't any indication either, could you? No, true, I couldn't. I was at Dr. Wilson's side as he performed the procedure, recording what he did. But at times, of course, he instructed me to fetch implements and such like. Whilst I was away from the operating table, obviously, I could have missed something. And at those times, what was the secondary assistant doing? following this Japanese man's orders to adjust the lighting or pass him implements. But that doesn't mean Mama wasn't a vital part of the team. Quite, yes. So would you kindly refrain from staring at my cheek like that? Professor Mikotoba Fink, was there nothing at all that seemed out of place to you? Well, yes, there was, as a matter of fact. Death resulted from a wound made by a Western-style sword transfixing the heart. That I found a little strange.
Hold it!
In all of the previous 4 killings attributed to the professor, the victims were killed by an enormous dog, I believe. Their throats were, well, mauled. Correct. And yet Lord Van Zeeks was stabbed. Ah, do you mean to say you think Lord Clint Van Zeeks may not have in fact been one of the professor's victims? There is no basis on which to doubt the findings of the investigations carried out at the time. But Gensen Asoji confessed to all of his crimes upon his arrest. He admitted to having taken the lives of all 5 members of the aristocracy. But just because he confessed doesn't mean he did it. It could have been a forced confession. Yet the beast that was used to carry out the killings was never identified. No evidence was found to suggest that Genshin had ever kept a dog. A true hound of hell. There was no other signs of internal injury. Nothing questionable at all.
Hold it!
But, you weren't actually present at the autopsy yourself, were you, Dr. Gory? Does that matter? Yeah, it kinda does. Well, I just wonder how useful your testimony can be in that case, really. I mean, it would be different if your mother, Dr. Seif, were in the stand, but... I've read all the paperwork about the case, and Mama's told me the story countless times. The statement I just made is exactly what's written in the autopsy report. I did confirm that myself at the time, it's true. Besides the stab wound, there were no other signs of internal trauma. I see. Mama told me all about it. Oh? She said there was nothing of note internally. But they did find an amazing piece of evidence, something unbelievable. Unbelievable? What do you mean? Come on, Dr. Gory, what was it? It was just that beautiful but dangerous piece of evidence removed from the man's stomach.
Hold it!
What exactly was it, though? What does this beautiful but dangerous mean? Well, it was sparkly and round with a hole, as if it might slip over a finger, perhaps. It was a ring, belonging to Gensen Asoji. What? Wait, this is new? My father's ring was inside the victim's stomach? Why would that be? That makes no sense. That's how they framed him. They made Clint Van Zeeks ingest the ring. That's how Genshin was framed. But at the time, Genshin wore a large ring on the digitimus quartus of his left hand, the 4th or ring finger. I'd understood it was some sort of keepsake. When my father left Japan for London 16 years ago, I was 8 years old. But I remember that ring. You do? My father's possessions were sent to our family home in Japan after his death, but the ring wasn't among them. Obviously not. It was a key piece of evidence. It remains under lock and key in the stores at Scotland Yard to this day. After the autopsy, Genshin was summoned by the police to check for the presence of his ring. It wasn't on his hand, of course. Moreover, there were deep abrasions on his finger where it had been pulled off. Something's not right here. They arrested the man there and then, right before my eyes. How could they? I brought the ring, along with me today. Oh, you did? What? Here it is, a bit dusty from years in the stores. Good gracious, yes, that's it. I haven't seen that in 10 long years. And that was found inside the victim's stomach? Yes, I'm afraid so. You hesitated there, Professor Mikotoba. Should we read something into that? Well, It's just that thinking back now, I didn't actually witness the moment it was extracted from the victim's body. Oh my, really? At that precise moment, Dr. Wilson had asked me to fetch him a new scalpel, you see. Dr. Gory, the removal of historic evidence from the stores requires my consent, does it not? However it came to be here, the court cannot deny that this is crucial evidence for today's proceedings. Very well. You may submit it. A ring belonging to Genshin Shoji found in Clint Van Zeek's stomach during the autopsy. The claws clasping from the gem's lock look sharp enough to cause a very nasty scratch. It's not the sort of ring normally seen in Japan. They almost look like claws protecting that jewel. We must examine it very carefully, Mr. Naruhodo. Very carefully indeed. Yeah, we should. The fat claws are doing a good job of protecting the equally fat gemstone in the middle of this ring. Yes, if you were clumsy, you could give yourself a rather nasty cut on them, I should think. That's gonna be probably relevant. Ow. Now my finger's bleeding. The claws really are sharp. Oh my, that was very quick clumsiness, Mr. Naruhodo, even for you. Who would make such a dangerous ring? You couldn't swallow it without doing yourself some fairly serious damage, exactly, surely. A sticky mochi bun of about that size would go down much better with some red bean paste in the middle. Someone as clumsy as me would probably manage to choke on it somehow. There's something that we're missing here. I mean, we examined the ring. How did this get in Clint's stomach? And that was the decisive piece of evidence that led to Genshin Soji's arrest. Correct. After further investigations by Scotland Yard, the man admitted to his crimes. That's a lie. My father was no killer. Barrick Van Zeeks, it was you. You twisted the truth to suit your purposes. Your hatred of me doesn't change the facts that were established 10 years ago. My brother Clint had closed in on the professor. In the end, he exposed the man and put a stop to his lethal rampage. In the way only a man of my brother's caliber could. That's everything, is it? Poor father, he looks so troubled. Perhaps because 10 years ago, something happened that's been weighing on his mind. Oh? I couldn't say were his words. That phrasing was deliberate, I'm sure. I wonder if he's had his suspicions all these years. If that's the case, we need to use the cross-examination to prove what really happened, and remove any trace of doubt. If we could establish that Kazuma-sama's claim of fabricated evidence was true, we can't shy away from this now, even if what we might uncover could lead to total calamity. Don't worry, Mr. Naruhodo, I'll be right beside you, whatever may happen. When did Mikatoba say I couldn't say? Is that in here? very nasty scratch.
Objection!
No, I was just gonna bring up the ring, but even if the guy was about to die, swallowing that ring, that would have just... Okay. Western style sword. This is it. Right here, look. No internal trauma noted anywhere in the body. That's it. If he swallowed that ring would have cut up his whole stomach inside because of how sharp it is on the top. But now, which part do I call it out on? Okay, that's it, internal means inside the body. There was no scratches or anything inside the body. That's very strange. Very, very strange. That ring would have cut everything up inside.
Objection!
Oh, great.
Objection!
How is this wrong? I'm getting mad right now. This is... The inconsistency is in the report. I'm trying to bring it up right now, but... Damn, I'm gonna save here, because I've already wasted 3 chances, but that's... You know, this is, you know, stuff like this kind of really bothers me about Ace Attorney, because there's certain pieces of evidence that you could bring up that make total sense. Because, like, I'm bringing up Clint's, you know, autopsy right now, and it says right here, no internal trauma noted anywhere in the body. And if that ring was actually swallowed, it would have cut up the whole body. So that's the inconsistency there. But I'm trying to bring up that inconsistency, and it just keeps telling me that I'm wrong. I know that I'm right. I'm gonna save here. That's annoying. There were no other signs of internal injury, nothing questionable at all. Maybe it's this one here.
Objection!
Okay, it's that there. That was on that one. The court has heard that the ring was extracted from the victim's stomach. But you didn't actually see it being removed, did you, Professor Mikotoba? That's right. As I said in my testimony before, at that moment, I was fetching a replacement scalpel that Dr. Wilson had requested. In other words, you can neither confirm nor deny whether this ring, in fact, really came from the victim's stomach or not. What are you suggesting, counsel? That the ring was never in the victim's stomach to begin with. It's entirely feasible that Dr. Wilson fabricated that detail about the autopsy. What are you saying? That Dr. Wilson was in possession of the ring in advance, after it was somehow stolen from Mr. Asoji. And he produced it during the procedure, pretending to have found it there and then in the victim's stomach.
Objection!
Supposition at best. What possible evidence do you have to support such a rash claim? The autopsy. This evidence, right here. That's the autopsy report. It's explicit in that report, Counsel. Other than the ring, nothing unusual was noted internally, so I'm not sure about how you intend to prove your point. You've already done it for me, my lord. The lack of internal injury says it all. What? To swallow a ring of this size would require considerable effort and determination. And in addition to its size, there are these sharp claws around the gemstone to contend with. My brother was a determined man, and on the brink of death, even more so, I'm sure. He would have stopped at nothing to ensure that an evil killer was brought to justice. But if he really had swallowed that enormous ring, it's inconceivable that no traces of its passage down his throat would have remained as internal trauma. No. And there you've arrived at the sticking point. That's precisely why I had my doubts about the findings myself 10 years ago. Then why didn't you say something at the time? I did. I still remember the conversation I had with Dr. Wilson in the laboratory that day. Look at this. Now, this is a very curious thing to find in a man's stomach, wouldn't you say? But isn't that rather peculiar, Dr. Wilson? What's that now, Mikotoba? Well, if he swallowed a ring of that size with those sharp metal claws that it has, surely you'd expect to see damage to the throat and esophagus, torn mucous membranes at the very least. Dr. Mikotoba, may I remind you that I have vastly more experience than you. I'm terribly sorry. I can think of plenty of ways to explain why no injuries would be seen. No, let's say this. The victim would appear to have ingested the item as evidence to identify his assailant. Go ahead, write it down. So I was right. Dr. Wilson deliberately fabricated the result of the autopsy to implicate my father. I'm disappointed, Counsel. That argument is nothing more than speculation. What? Dr. Wilson was Britain's leading authority on forensic science and autopsy work, and so was Dr. Seif, and yet she was involved in a conspiracy. There is no scientific basis on which to doubt the man's expert opinion. Pardon the interruption, my lord, but damage to the mucous membranes of the throat is easily identified, even in living subjects. Using a device called an endoscope, recently demonstrated in practical use in France. I want one. The government can pay. I don't think so. And Dr. Gory, rest assured that your removal of evidence from the stores without permission will not go unpunished. We open up the dead to find the truth. I beg your pardon? But Mama, she chose to stitch her corpses up with all her secrets inside. That's wrong. Dr. Gory, it's looking as though she's chosen to walk a different path to her mama. So she's on our side. Yes, the ring. What about the ring? I've just remembered something. An earlier incident. What incident? The one I recounted to you before, about a memory I have. Of Genshin Asoji saving my life. What? My father saved your life? It was 10 years ago, on a foggy night. Genshin and I were walking down some back streets at a late hour. Yeah, and Genshin saved him from the gang members. All of a sudden... Don't make a peep, you're coming with us. All of our assailants were armed with pistols, their faces obscured by scarves. The next thing I knew, there was silence all around. Genshin lay on the cobbled street. Blood was seeping from his left hand. He'd shielded me. It was on the ring finger of his left hand that he used to wear that ring. Ah, are you saying... I've always believed those thugs were after me. But now, I'm starting to question if perhaps I wasn't the intended target after all. Wait, but... Genshin was arrested 2 days after that attack. And in that short interval, the decisive evidence needed to indict him was miraculously found. You mean, the ring was stolen from him? You think that's what those thugs were after that night? So that's how he lost the ring. You pathetic coward. You expect me to believe that you weren't involved. What do you mean by that? It was you, wasn't it? You're the one who took it. You stole my father's ring. You set the whole thing up so you could paint him as a mass murderer and have him arrested. No, he didn't. Kazuma. Open your eyes. Ryunosuke? You must know deep down. The truth can be completely obscured even when your judgment is only slightly clouded. But at the moment, you seem to be floundering through a dense fog. Is that why you were so insistent I should be present in this trial? To see you like this? What's so funny? Well, this is an amusing spectacle. What a grandiose expression on your face, as if you were Lady Justice herself. It seems you thoroughly convinced yourself on this alleged fabrication of the autopsy report. So much that you're apparently blind to the blatant contradiction that will be born out of it. What? Though it's extremely hard to believe, let us imagine that there was some misconduct during the autopsy. If that were the case, why would Asoji not have disputed the findings in his trial? Oh. In the closed court hearing 10 years ago, the defendant never once denied the claims against him. Isn't that right, Lord Van Zieks? Yes, that is indeed correct. Upon hearing the verdict of guilty, he merely closed his eyes, quietly accepting the judgment. The actions of a man who has accepted responsibility for his deeds and is resigned to his fate. But then... Oh my, that is very strange. If Mr. Asoji did nothing to oppose the charges against him, then... that would surely mean there was no fabricated evidence. No, there was fabricated evidence. Something's not right here. If he was innocent, why would he not dispute it in court? An obvious conclusion at which you should have arrived many minutes ago, Prosecutor Soji. The only logical conclusion that I can think of is that he was protecting someone. That's the only logical conclusion I can think of why he took the fall. Your twisted loyalty and clouded judgment are hampering your ability for logical thought. Genshin Asoji's silence at his hearing can mean only one thing. There was no fabrication of evidence during the autopsy of his final victim 10 years ago. Now, something's not right here. But if that autopsy was all above board, there'll be nothing to stop Lord Strongheart bringing this trial to an immediate conclusion.
Objection!
Thank you, Ryunosuke. If it wasn't for your frank words just now, this trial may very well have ended prematurely. Kazuma? What's this latest absurdity, Counsel? My lord, your reasoning is perfectly sound. But for one giant hole. I beg your pardon? You claim my father's silence was due to the fact that there was no fabricated evidence. But there's another possible explanation. You've overlooked the possibility that he had a reason for maintaining that silence. Like I was saying...
Objection!
Silence that would lead to him being convicted and sent to his death? If the autopsy results were an invention, there's no conceivable reason why the man wouldn't have protested.
Objection!
Oh? Those results were an invention, all right. There's no question of that. Or are you forgetting that two people with a connection to that autopsy have been assassinated? If I force the grievances I feel from my mind, I start to see you in a very different light. I think perhaps it's you who who's been living in delusion those 10 years. Me? Kazuma-sama has created one last chance for us here, Mr. Naruhodo. If we can only show that there was a reason for his father's silence in his trial. A reason why the man would have said nothing even though he was innocent. Could it have been part of some negotiation, perhaps? Enough rhetoric. The court must be shown evidence. What proof do you have that could possibly explain Asoji's silence in court? The papers. I'm starting to think those. I, Genshin Asoji, hereby request that upon my death, any and all material possessions and wealth belonging to me in London will be delivered to my son Kazuma Asoji in the Empire of Japan. It is with deep sadness that I accept my fate in this foreign land and knowledge that I will never see my homeland or family again, but I regret nothing about my chosen path. The last will is the only thing that I can think of here. Those... Unless there's some kind of, coded message.
Take that!
This is the defense's answer to that question. As I indicated before, my patience for rhetoric is growing thin. Oh no. You could have at least accompanied that penalty with an explanation of why the answer was wrong. If Kazuma-sama's father knew that the evidence being used to convict him was fabricated, why would he have said nothing in his trial? If it were me, I'd have protested my innocence until I was blue in the face. So if we're right about the autopsy reports, there must have been a strong reason for his silence. Well then, perhaps he was saying nothing in exchange for some sort of clemency. Ah, that could be it. My lord, the defense would like to... Enough rhetoric. The court must be shown evidence. Okay, we're gonna save here. The aiding and abetting, that the execution never took place. This might be it, the dismissal notice, but is there anything else that I'm missing here?
Take that!
It's true that I'm right. It's true that Genshin Asoji's silence during his trial resulted in his conviction. But that didn't actually lead to his execution. On the contrary, it led to his escape. An escape that was only possible because he'd been sentenced to death. Although I find it hard to believe my father would have negotiated in that way, the defense is correct. A fake execution, falsification of a death certificate, and a jailbreak inside a coffin. Clearly such an elaborate plan couldn't have been carried out by my father alone. He must have had the help of a collaborator from the judiciary. I have here the dismissal notice of the chief warder who was working in the prison at the time. The notes read, there are indications that the jailbreak was in planning prior to the inmate's incarceration. In other words, there were suggestions of some sort of negotiation between Mr. Asoji and the British government. In exchange for his silence in court, he was given an assurance that he would be broken out of prison. Yes, with that sort of clandestine agreement in place, I can imagine he would have kept very quiet. I would go further than that, in fact. I would say that the elaborate jailbreak of Mr. Asoji can be explained in no other way. Order, order. First fabricated evidence, and now a jailbreak conspiracy? Of course, because it's all intimately linked. The prosecution wishes to summon new witnesses to the stand. Witnesses? People who can testify about the jailbreak that took place 10 years ago. Mr. Vigil and the warden. Ah. Governor Caden, yup. And the poor chief warden of the prison, Mr. Vigil. I won't allow this trial to turn to a farce to summon the governor of the prison after all these years. Oh, it wouldn't be any trouble, my lord. What? Father? My dear friend may appear a little pated at times, but I can assure you, he is extremely thorough. He wired both Barclay and the local prison earlier, asking Governor Caden and Mr. Vigil to attend the Old Bailey as a matter of extreme urgency. Mr. Sholmes did that. He knew we would call on them. Are you telling me that they're already here? Both men, are you, unless I'm much mistaken, waiting just outside the courtroom at this very moment? My lord, you must permit this trial to proceed as you declared it at its outset. You promised that we would stop at nothing to uncover the whole truth behind these disturbing findings. Very well. Bring in the witnesses. Make no mistake, I too would like nothing more than to lay this business to rest once and for all. Oh, now this trial is heating up. This is gonna get crazy now. Would the new witnesses state their names and occupation for the court, please? I, Barry Caden, Governor of Barclay Prison. Everyone calls me Gossip. I sell jauntry little tidbits to pass her... No. Your other persona, if you don't mind. Oh, I do beg your pardon. Of course. My name is Daily Vigil. I used to be the chief warder at Barclay Prison. The reason you've been summoned here to court today is to testify about the jailbreak of the so-called professor 10 years ago. Lost, the professor? We've already been through all this a decade ago. And the conclusion was that there wasn't anything untoward happened. He escaped. What are you talking about? A convict escaped from your prison, Governor. Hardly what you'd call nothing untoward. Ah, well, the convict's death certificate was somehow falsified after he was allegedly executed, and he escaped the prison inside his own coffin. A plan of that complexity could never have been carried out without the help of somebody of influence inside the prison. Governor Caden, don't imagine that the passage of time will afford you any protection. If it turns out that you were involved in the plot to break Mr. Soji out of your prison, then of course, the consequences will be very serious. In all likelihood, a capital punishment. Oh. Gads, hold on there, laddie. All I did was... Ha! Look at how much he scared him now. Great words, Kazuma. Witness, Governor Caden. Aye, sir. You have a critical role to play in the public safety of our country, a great responsibility to shoulder. The significance of your testimony in court cannot be understated. Therefore, think carefully before you speak. And Prosecutor Soji, if you threaten to witness again, you will be held in contempt of court. I mean, yes, technically that was a threat, but he was basically telling him, you better have not been involved in this plot, because if you are, you're gonna face serious punishment. That's what he basically said. I mean, I don't know, maybe it's like a half threat in a way, but he basically told him that if you were involved in this crime, you're gonna pay the consequences. You know, the police, investigators do say that, you know, if you were involved in this case, there will be consequences. My apologies, my lord. There's no disputing the fact that an intricate jailbreak plot was enacted 10 years ago. Clearly, you were both involved in some way. So you will testify before the court now and explain exactly what took place. Very well. Let the witnesses give their formal testimony. Tell the court everything you know of the plot to break a Soji out of Barclay 10 years ago. Wonder where this is gonna go now. The jailbreak plot. It was the day that the Japanese jock was found guilty. The directive came from the prosecutor's office. I assigned a convict to the chief warder Vigil here, and put the plan to action behind the scenes. I was responsible for Soji right up until the night of his execution, but I knew nothing of any plot. I didn't ken if there was some negotiations between the convict and the prosecutor's office. All I did was carry out my duty for Her Majesty Great British Empire. A directive from the prosecutor's office. Are you saying that that was the jailbreak plot? Aye, that's right. Who sent it? Who authorized that plan? I didn't ken that. You're saying you don't know? Listen, there wasn't a thing about the professor case that wasn't any unusual in some way. He broke out of your prison. How is that unusual? I didn't ask any questions. I just did what I was told to. More than that, I couldn't tell ya. I see. But if the jailbreak plan originated from the prosecutor's office, then one thing is very clear. As suspected, there were clandestine dealings going on between Mr. Asoji and that office. The jailbreak was promised in exchange for Mr. Asoji admitting the crimes he didn't commit. That, counsel, is nothing more than speculation on your part. So, let me ask the defense. Oh, yes, my lord? I fail to see how these witnesses have any more pertinent information here. Do you intend to assert your right to a cross-examination? Yes, we do. Absolutely. I have no intention of squandering a single opportunity, my lord. It seems all you Japanese are fiercely tenacious. Very well. Proceed, counsel. The jailbreak plot. It was the day the Japanese jock was found guilty. The directive came from the prosecutor's office.
Hold it!
And you say you don't know who actually issued the directive? Aye, that's right. All I can be sure of is that it was official. But if it was from the prosecutor's office, that narrows down who could have issued it straight away. And it wasn't me. I can't even say with certainty that it did originate from the prosecutor's office. What? Then how did you know it was a direct order? There's no telling where it started. There's a fair chance it came from higher up the ladder. Basically, I cannot give you any indication of who was behind it. You can't be serious. All we can say for sure is that the order must have come from somebody in authority, I suppose. The likes of us on the ground, as it were, didn't bother with idle speculation. We just get the job done. I assigned a convict to the chief warder vigil here and put the plan to action behind the scenes.
Hold it!
So, Mr. Vigil, you didn't know anything about it at all. That's right. My only role in the scheme was as a scapegoat. That's right, isn't it, Governor? Some poor beggar had to take the rap for it. So he admitted to it. He framed Vigil. Alright then, who else didn't know about the plan? I've not the first idea, laddie. My part in the whole business is basically just dealing with the aftermath. But I wouldn't be surprised if there were other folk in the prison service who'd been given similar orders. So you don't know who else was involved? Aye, that's right. All I can tell you is that the night it actually happened, the person at the reins was Dr. Stevens. Dr. Courtney Stevens, or Dr. Sipe as she's known now. Why did I have to get caught up in such a terrible business? Why would the coroner be involved with, a coroner wouldn't be involved in the execution of a prisoner. That right there is very suspicious. I was reasonable for Asoji right up until the night of his execution, but I knew nothing of any plot.
Hold it!
Did you not notice anything unusual happening in the lead up to that night? Oh, everything was unusual, exception after exception. After all, it was the professor. The man had terrorized the country as never before of his crimes. In order to hide his identity, he was forced to wear an iron mask over his head. Hideous treatment. The fellow was surprisingly docile for someone who'd taken the lives of 5 of the country's nobles. Being the chief warder, I was the only person permitted to approach his cell. I can still hardly believe that I was duped by my own country. I believe you just jumped from the window of the governor's office when the jailbreak was blamed on you, didn't you? Losh, Vigil, I cannot apologize enough. No, Governor, I don't believe you can. It won't change what's happened. The governor does feel somewhat responsible. And what else can you tell us about the situation, Governor Caden? I didn't ken if there was some negotiations between the convict and the prosecutor's office. The governor probably has a pretty strong accent by just reading his dialogue here.
Hold it!
But you've already acknowledged that orders came from the prosecutor's office to arrange for the man's escape. There must have been some sort of negotiation. It's the only explanation. Aye, well, be that as it may, I didn't ken nothing about that. The witness stand is no place for telling what you don't know for sure. I ken that much I do. Then I presume you also know this. Not telling what you do know is a criminal offense. So you were just following orders, is that it? I'm afraid that won't absolve you of guilt here. A man was still killed illegally, even if he was a condemned criminal. You may very well be found complicit in murder, Governor. So that's what it's to be, is it? Even with the threat of conviction, you won't break your silence. All I did was carry out my duty for Her Majesty's Great British Empire.
Hold it!
Did you carry out the plan in its entirety? I did everything I could at the time. As you know, Gensen Asoji was shot dead in Lowgate Cemetery after the escape. Tell me, was that part of the plan too? My instructions were to do with getting the jock out of the jail and nothing more. I cannot tell you anything about what happened after that, only, personally, I believe his death was the last part of the plan. Oh, what's this?
Excuse me.
Mr. Vigil, is something wrong? Yes, sir. What can I do for you, sir? He's saluting now. What is it? Some sort of Barclay convention? What Governor Caden was just saying seemed to upset you. Did it bring something to mind, perhaps? For the last 10 years, I've completely blotted out the memories of that time from my mind. I was betrayed by my superiors, in the name of my country. Just as my father was betrayed, it seems. But you see, thinking back now, I really can't imagine that the shooting of Mr. Asoji in the cemetery was ever part of the plan. What makes you think that? Well, it just doesn't make sense, does it? To make the man admit the crimes he didn't commit with the promise of a jailbreak, only to kill him in the end. That's right, they didn't even need to carry out the jailbreak, they could have just killed him in the prison. That's right, that's a very good point. That's treachery of the worst kind, but the point is, if the intention was always to betray him, why would there be any need for all the chinchasseries of an escape? Ah. Yes, that's quite true. If whoever negotiated with Asoji never intended to keep his or her end of the bargain, it would have been far simpler just to let the man be executed in prison as dictated by his sentence. Exactly. It all happened in that vast chamber of secrets as Barclay, behind the high prison walls. I suppose nobody knows what really went on in the execution room now. Yes, it's an unsettling mystery, certainly. Truth be told, there is a wee matter that's never quite made sense to me. What is that? If you believe there was some kind of negotiation behind the jailbreak, at Ween Asoji and a body at the top, it doesn't quite add up, does it? Governor Caden, I must insist that you explain these doubts that you have. By amending your formal testimony. Gads, aye, go on then. Strongheart's not happy. It seems to me that the Japanese fellow didn't have nothing to bargain with.
Hold it!
Admitting to the crimes, that was what he had to bargain with, surely. I cannot see that myself. After all, did the prosecution have conclusive evidence against the Carly, eh? This, you mean, discovered during the final victim's autopsy. There's every possibility that conclusive evidence was fabricated by Scotland Yard and the prosecutor's office.
Objection!
Possibilities are all very well, but nothing has been proven. You can holler about misconduct in the trial 10 years ago all you like. But if you can't establish that it happened with hard evidence, no one's going to listen. And, that's right. So what I'm saying is, the convict had nothing he could use for any kind of bargaining at all. The witness makes an astute point, logically. It would seem no negotiation could have taken place. The Asoji papers. And yet the plan to break the man out of prison was definitely put into practice. So he must have been armed with something that gave him an angle to negotiate. The Asoji papers. Remember how the prison desperately wanted to find it? They were like, where is it? So Asoji-san agreed to confess to the crimes because he was assured he'd be broken out of prison later. There was something more in those papers, probably, because Governor Kaden gave us the Asoji papers, but he probably didn't give us all of them. I really don't think that Kazuma-sama's father would have engaged in such negotiations, and perhaps something compelled him to agree. What a terrible thing. Using the law to legitimize such underhand dealings with a desperate man, only to double-cross him in the end. It's quite the opposite of justice. I can't help feeling there's something about this apparent negotiation that doesn't quite add up. Something doesn't quite add up, Mr. Naruhodo. No, it doesn't, but I can't quite put my finger on what yet. Well, in that case, we must keep digging until we identify the problem. I'm gonna save here, because I only got one chance. The Asoji papers. Mr. Vigil claims disappeared after the convict's execution. The only weapon I have left, it's this.
Objection!
Confessing under oath to murders he didn't commit on a verbal assurance of later being broken out of prison. Gensen Asoji was taking an incredibly risky gamble. Very true. There was nothing to stop the British breaking their word and executing him behind closed doors anyway. Under normal circumstances, no man would stake his life on a gentleman's agreement like that. Which means that Mr. Asoji must have had a trump card. Something that guaranteed he wouldn't be betrayed. Some kind of weapon. Havers, the fella couldn't possibly have had anything like that. But you know that he did, Governor. The Asoji papers, the name given to the last will and testament of Gensen Asoji. Ah. It turns out that Mr. Asoji was hiding his will in his cell at Barclay. Chief Warder Vigil caught him with it one day. You squealed, did you? You wee rat. Did I tell you not to keep that a secret? So, now we told about it. But the thing is, though, is Kaden framed him, so he has no obligation to be loyal to him. You can't touch me now. Arrgh. When Mr. Vigil caught sight of that will through the bars of the convict's cell, Mr. Asoji pleaded with the warder. Alright then, but what's on that paper? A last will and testament. This will is the only weapon I have left now. A weapon? And after the convict had been killed following the elaborate pretense of the jailbreak, that document mysteriously disappeared, didn't it? Well, yes. All the prison warders searched through the belongings in his cell, but that will was just nowhere to be found. As I understand it, an exhaustive search was made for the document, which became known as the Asoji papers. Governor Kaden, I believe you ordered your prison staff to find it at all costs, didn't you? Hey? Would I be right in saying that you knew? You knew that the so-called Asoji papers had the potential to make great waves somehow. Jinx, what the blazes are you blittering about? The will was found, right and proper, in the fella's cell where I said it would be, but he didn't give him all the papers. He only gave him, there was something else in those documents. But how can that be? We're in his cell. We all searched the place, from top to bottom. Well, you didn't do a proper job, eh, you peely-wally galu? You can't criticize me now. I showed it to you before, did I know, young lawyer? Yes, you did. I have the document here. It's written in Japanese and reads, The Last Will and Testament of Gensen Asoji. which means everything is as it should be. Not quite, my lord. You see, there's an undeniable inconsistency here. What? What inconsistency? Mr. Asoji described this document as the only weapon he had left. And yet, this will contains nothing of significance at all. Nothing that would have given the convict any leverage. Are you suggesting, my learned friend, that the last will and testament stored at Barclay Prison all these years is actually a fake? I didn't think about that. It's probably a fake then. I was thinking that there was an extra part that they took away, but instead they took the whole thing away. They only, this is a fake, but is there a way to tell that it's a fake? I wonder if Shishiro Goku wrote that, because it's in Japanese. As has clearly been demonstrated already. What went on at Barclay Prison was far from above board. That last vilification by the defense was an affront to the entire British legal system. This absurd notion of a weapon is something for which we have only the former chief warder's word. The man could quite easily be lying, or at the very least, sorely mistaken. What? No. I definitely heard him say that, I swear. Clearly, we need to get to the bottom of this. We need to know exactly what happened with these so-called Asoji papers. A waste of time. If the will was fake, where is the real document?
Objection!
Mr. Vigil was stabbed in the back by the judiciary 10 years ago. He lost everything, very nearly his own life. And now you're going to do it again. You're already, ready to brand him a liar and turn your back on him without even letting him defend himself. It's clear that Barclay Prison is hiding something. It's clear that the jailbreak was masterminded by somebody in the prosecutor's office. It's clear that some illicit negotiations took place. Is your lordship, just going to gloss over these obvious... What did you say? We should hear more from the chief warder. Have him testify again. Oh, this is great. This is great right now. This is the best trial ever. It would seem that a vocal few here are utterly blind to the truth. Very well then. Let the witnesses testify again. Tell the court precisely what you think you saw of the convict's last will and testament. Yes, sir, my lord. The Asoji papers. As the warder responsible for condemned convicts, I attended to Mr. Asoji and kept watch over his cell. The night after he was found guilty in court, he was doing something with the will in his cell. We turned the cell inside out looking for it after the execution, but to no avail. I only found out about the Asoji papers when a directive came telling me to impound them. The document was in the folds of the fellow's robe that was left in his cell, a kimono I think it called. In his kimono? That's a lie. We searched every inch of the man's cell. We looked through all his clothes. It can't be true. Were you no satisfied with calling me a liar the once, eh, you wee waffinger? Ha, there's nothing you can do about it now. You don't have any hold over me anymore. Other than the hold you like to take on my cravat, of course. Is that what you're going to do, is it? Are you going to give me a good shake again? Or are you too scared? Little and large. What a double act. We complied with Mr. Asoji's will as far as was possible. All his personal effects were delivered to his family home in Japan. Not his ring! As a courtesy to the homeland of the most notorious killer our country's ever seen. And we were much obliged. I can confirm that all my father's belongings arrived safely. Aye, and you cannot deny the handwritten writing is that of your old man, eh? Yes, there's no mistaking that it is my father's brushwork. I think that, what I think is, my original theory might be true. It might be that they took away an extra document. Really. And this last will and testament was the man's last weapon, was it? I think we can safely assume that the convict was merely prattling, knowing that his end was nigh. But why would he write a will if he knew he was going to die? If he knew he wasn't going to die? So, counsel for the defense, your cross-examination, please. Yes, my lord. The Asoji Papers. As the warder responsible for condemned convicts, I attended Mr. Asoji and kept watch over his cell.
Hold it!
So, would that mean that you conversed with Mr. Asoji? Yes, certainly. Though there was precious little time before his execution was due. He was remarkably calm, considering his days were very much numbered. In all honesty, he really didn't strike me as a man capable of mass murder. Yet he confessed in full to the crimes. I know. That's why I felt compelled to ask him one day. I can still recall his reply. I'm guilty of the unforgivable crime of ending another human's life, yes. But he was so tranquil and intelligent, it put me in mind of an Eastern holy man. And what about the will you saw him with? What can you tell us about that? It was the beginning of all the drama. I remember it very well, yes. The night after he was found guilty in court, he was doing something with that will in his cell.
Hold it!
And he pleaded with you not to report him, didn't he? Yes, that's right. And like the Bambot Yar, you didn't tell me. A blatant breach of trust that was. How ironic is that? A blatant breach of trust. You're the one who framed him. I could see that the man had a noble spirit. I found myself wanting to treat him accordingly. But according to what you told us 2 days ago, the convict had been strictly forbidden from having any writing materials whatsoever. Yes, you're quite right. Ah, so when exactly was the will penned? That was before the man was remanded in Barclay, obviously. Yes, as a prosecutor office under supervision of the relevant authorities. I personally instructed Asoji to make a will for the benefit of his family and his homeland. In that case, why was it found in his cell? What do you mean by that? Well, if it was penned at the prosecutor's office, you would have expected that it would remain there for safekeeping, surely. Ah. It's curious. There doesn't seem to be any obvious explanation for why it was subsequently found in the convict's cell. Well, the defense makes an astute point. Well, Governor? A prison governor cannot be expected to ken the inner workings of the prosecutor's office. In that case, Lord Strongheart, perhaps you can shed some light on the matter. I'm unable to offer an explanation here and now. That's not good enough. I would have to consult with the notary responsible for the will at the time. Why was it in his cell? You would think that they would just send it off. The fact that my father's will was discovered in his cell, clearly inconsistent with what was expected. I want to know why. Another inexplicable mystery, then. Well, the thing is about that will. We turned the cell inside out looking for it after the execution, but to no avail.
Hold it!
It was the governor who ordered the search of the will, as I understand it. Is that right? Yes. And when I reported back that we couldn't find it, he grabbed me by the cravat and yelled, "It cannot have disappeared completely in my face." Aye, well, it's due to the governor to keep everybody working as hard as they should. No. I think the governor needs a wee taste of his own medicine, Mr. Naruhodo. The point is, it was clearly considered a very important document, wasn't it? But it proved impossible to find. That's right. Then before I knew it, before I knew it, it was in the morning paper, that blood-curdling article. The executed mass murderer who'd risen from the dead. Oh, you mean... The article based on Mr. Drubber's experience in Lowgate Cemetery. Yes, that was it. The day after I'd read the news, I was summoned to the governor's office. Wait a second. And that's when the awful accusation was made. That you'd added Gensen Asoji to escape from the prison, resulting in your immediate dismissal. I'm afraid I really don't remember anything after that. As the governor of the prison, I had no choice. I couldn't have done anything else. I wonder, could it be? Could the document be hidden somehow in the sword? Is that possible? I wonder if it's possible that he hid it somewhere inside the sword. If you unscrewed the bottom, I wonder if it could be actually hidden, because there's not a lot of places he could have hidden it, but you know, he wouldn't have had it. He wouldn't have had his sword in prison with him. He had to have hid it somewhere they couldn't find it. I only found out about the Asoji papers when a directive came telling me to impound them.
Hold it!
And that directive came from the same source as the one instructing you about the jailbreak. Aye, from that top level of the prosecutor's office. What name was on it? I didn't ken a form, and I didn't ken now. All I can tell you is that my orders were to do everything in my power to find that document. The directive said it had to be somewhere inside the fella's cell. Document. Was that the wording? Document, not will. Aye, that's what it said. Am I clutching at straws here? I just wonder if it was really Gensen Asoji's last will and testament that the sender of that directive was after. Continue with your testimony then, witness. The document was in the folds of the fella's robe that was left in his cell, a kimono I think it's called.
Hold it!
In Mr. Asoji's kimono? Aye, the one he'd brought with him when he was locked up. Yes, he was permitted to have his personal effects with him during his incarceration, I understand. That's right, he was granted as much freedom as possible during the few days before his execution. Indeed, he had a number of items of personal significance, I remember. He was very reluctant to part with them. Some books, that kimono, his sword. His sword. I was right! Karuma, the famous sword of the Asoji clan. It's inside the sword! It bears the soul of my family. I don't doubt it, but I was really getting at that. Forget it being called the soul of the clan. Could the man have had a more obvious weapon? Have some respect, Ryunosuke. Respectful silence. The warriors carry firearms at all times, and the inmates have shackles around their ankles. He couldn't have hurt anybody with that thing. Still, he was allowed a sword, but no writing materials. Aye. The writing materials were inside the sword. He wrote that will before he came to stay with us at Barclay, you see. Dr. Mikotomo was asked to bring the necessary Japanese writing implements to the prosecutor's office. A Suzuri ink stone, black sumi ink, and some hanshi rice paper, no doubt. I was present when he wrote it. But I'm sorry to say, the letter just looked like a swirling mass of jet black earthworms to me.
Excuse me.
Are you feeling faint, Mr. Vigil? Mr. Vigil. Sir, it was Scarlet, sir. What? Oh, I'm terribly sorry. I didn't mean to blurt it out like that. Less swaying and more explaining would be helpful. Is it something about the testimony we just heard? Have you recalled something of importance? Something of importance. Possibly, or possibly not. I'm unable to tell which way he's leaning, I'm afraid. My lord, the defense asked Mr. Vigil be permitted to supplement his testimony. with this possibility or possibly not important detail. Permission granted. Go ahead, Mr. Vigil. Yes, it was Scarlet. As I remember it, the document was written in Scarlet Ink, but perhaps I'm mistaken.
Hold it!
Scarlet, you say? Well, yes. I mean, I only caught sight of it for a brief moment, of course. But even by the dim light in the cell, I remember thinking that it was an unusual color. At the very least, I'm quite sure it wasn't black. Witness, is that really what you saw? What? Sir? Is something wrong, Lord Strongheart? I apologize. Continue. What do you make of that, Mr. Naruhodo? For Lord Strongheart to be so visually shaken in that way. Dinna Haver, you can plainly see the writing here, and it's as black as the Earl of Hell's waistcoat. Well, yes, you're right. Mr. Vigil, I'd like to confirm one point with you. Did you actually see the content of the document that Mr. Asoji was holding that night? Oh, well, no. I mean, there was no time. As soon as he noticed me there, he hid it behind his back. But it was definitely a will, was it? Yes, it was. That's what Mr. Asoji told me. The court need waste no further time in this matter. We have the will in question in our possession. There's nothing more to add. A will written in Scarlet Ink. What did Mr. Vigil really see Kazuma's father holding, I wonder? If you have an inkling, Mr. Naruhodo, you must present it to the court at once. That testimony doesn't give much away. So this will really was penned by Kazuma-sama's father. I wonder what he could have possibly have meant when he described it as a weapon. It's starting to sound very much like Mr. Asoji had nothing, but the plan to break him out of jail went ahead, which means he must have had some bargaining power. He must have been hiding something. It's the only explanation that makes sense. It's starting to sound like Mr. Asoji actually might have had something. Which is it, Mr. Naruhodo? I'm not sure, but I feel as though I'm on the brink of understanding all this. Let's listen to all the information again and see what more we can learn. We can't overlook that smallest detail. Absolutely. Scarlet Ink. Why would Strongheart be so freaked out about Scarlet Ink? Could this be it? I don't know. I feel that if you because on a Japanese sword, you can actually take off the bottom. The handle. You can actually take it off. And I wonder if I wonder if the document is actually inside here. That's what I'm wondering. It's probably inside the sword. That's what I think. It's been in plain sight the entire time. Scarlet Ink. What color is Scarlet Ink? I have to look up the color here. Scarlet Ink. What is that? Let me see. I don't know. What is that? Scarlet Ink is kind of a, looks like a reddish pink color. That's what I'm seeing from here. The bottles look very similar to the one in Gregson's trunk. I wonder. Could that be it? Wait. Scarlet ink stains visible on the little and ring fingers on the right hand, but no document and corresponding ink was found. What does that mean? But Vigil said he saw Genshin writing...
Objection!
Scarlet-colored writing is what you said you thought you saw, Mr. Vigil. And I believe that's exactly what you did see. What? Peevers again. You've no evidence to say that. Have a look at this report. That's my brother's autopsy report. Yes, and there's something in here that's bothered me since I first read it. It states that scarlet-colored ink stains were noted on the fingers of the victim's right hand. Yes, so it does. So this is scarlet ink. Now, I'm not familiar with the habits of the British aristocracy, I freely admit. But I would hazard a guess that they don't all go around with ink stains on their fingertips, do they? Your wit is not appreciated. My brother was a well-bred and fastidious man. Should ink have sullied his fingertips, he would have cleaned them immediately. What is your point, counsel? My point is this. Whatever Lord Clint Van Zieks was writing in that unusually colored ink, it must have been directly before his death. Because he died before he had the opportunity to clean his hand. What? So he was writing the document. The document that Genshin had was written by Clint. I remember something troubled me at the time. At the scene, the lid of my brother's inkwell was open. But Clint was punctilious about such things, it seemed. Unusual. And no document penned in the color of the ink that was in the inkwell was ever found. So the document had disappeared. Are you suggesting that the document my father had in his hand that night in his cell was the same document that Lord Clint Van Zieks was writing moments before his death? Then, it was... If Mr. Vigil's testimony is to be believed, it can only mean that, yes, Mr. Vigil, Sir? When you spotted Mr. Asoji the document in his cell, his precise words were as follows, were they not? Alright then, but what's on that paper? A last will and testament. This will is the only weapon I have left now. A last will and testament. Ah. What does this mean, though? If the conversation really did go as Mr. Vigil says, then what we now know completely changes the meaning of what Mr. Asoji said. You really think Mr. Vigil did indeed see the convict with a will, but it wasn't that of Genshin Asoji. It was Clint's will. It was the last will and testament of Lord Clint Van Zeeks. No. What?
Objection!
So he wasn't lying. This is madness. My brother's last will and testament? That would mean that he had chosen to die. That is what it would mean, yes. No, impossible. That is utterly out of the question. Lord Van Zeeks. Clint was pursuing the professor. It consumed him day and night. Whatever happened, he would never have abandoned his investigation before its conclusion, never. He wouldn't rest until the job was done, or maybe it was, until the killer was caught. The idea that he would willingly accept his own death, it's obscene. What if my original theory was true? Do you guys remember a few cases ago? I said that what if Barrick's brother was actually the professor?
Objection!
And yet, we can be sure that he was writing his will moments before his death. What if... And that Genshin Asoji came to be in possession of that document. What if Genshin found out that Clint was the professor? And so that he wrote a will and then Genshin killed him? What if that's what happened? So what could the will possibly have contained? Clearly something that couldn't be made public under any circumstances whatsoever. That's why they wanted Genshin to plead guilty to be the professor, so that it wouldn't be a Clint, because Clint was a respectable prosecutor. I hope that I'm not right on that. I can't imagine that Barrick's brother would be a serial killer, but what if? Because armed with that document, my father was able to negotiate with the judiciary for his life. It was something so damning that it prompted the powers that be to enact the daring jailbreak plot. Yes, there can be no question that the will contained information of the utmost secrecy. Barrick said that the victims of the professor, that they were all really bad people. That's what Barrick said. They were really bad aristocrats. But the final victim, Clint, was actually a good man. Information of the utmost secrecy. What if he was on a vigilante crusade? Ah, no. It couldn't be. I've heard more than enough. Pursuing this notion of a phantom nobody can attest to having seen serves absolutely no purpose.
Objection!
No, my lord. That's unacceptable. What did you say, counsel? The last will and testament that Genshin Asoji had in his possession was that of Lord Clint Van Zeeks. All the testimony and evidence presented to the court has logically led us to that as a possibility. We have a duty to pursue the line of reasoning to its conclusion. But with no possible means of knowing the contents of the document, there's no line of reasoning to pursue. Barrick's so agitated right now. A reason why Lord Clint Van Zeeks, a man of high noble standing, would have chosen death. Because he might have been the serial killer. Information so secret, people in the judiciary would be willing to negotiate the jailbreak of a condemned killer. What did he know? The only explanation that fits those facts is an unthinkable truth that turns everything on its head. He knew something, but it's just too hideous. Mr. Naruhodo. However difficult the situation might become, you work with your client in pursuit of the truth. That's what you resolved to do when you entered the courtroom this morning, if I'm not mistaken, Miss Susato. So hold your head high and keep shouldering on. Yes, you're right. I feel like this is going to be the most important part of the case. 10 years ago, in his final moments, Lord Clint Van Zeeks left behind a will. A will that Genshin Soji was able to use as a weapon to negotiate his escape from prison. In all probability, the details in the will were related to the Professor case. The defense's last statement is mere conjecture. What are you getting at, man? Ryunosuke? As soon as those words came out of my mouth, there's no going back. I believe that the last will and testament of Lord Clint Van Zieks was in fact... a report? No. An accusation? No. A confession. I think it's the confession. I think that Barrick's brother was a serial killer. That's what it was. That's why he chose death. He wrote in the will that he was the serial killer. Remember, every single person the serial killer killed were bad people. That's what's known about it. They were all bad aristocrats. And he was an aristocrat himself, so he would have known those people. Is that really the case? Is Barrick's brother really the serial killer? He's gonna... If I say that, Barrick's gonna flip out. He's gonna accuse me of destroying his brother's reputation. Man. Oh man, Remember, Genshin said he ended someone's life. I think he ended Clint's life. Oh man. This is... I'm gonna save here. I'm gonna go with confession, let's see. You can do this, Mr. Naruhodo. I believe that what Lord Clint Van Zieks actually penned that day was a confession. A confession? Regarding the mass murderer known as the Professor. And his true identity.
Objection!
Enough. Counsel. What are you saying? Do you even realize? A confession about the true identity of the Professor? That would mean... Yup. Oh man, this is so messed up right now. Oh man, ugh. Oh man. Oh my god, I said that a few cases ago. I said, what if Barrick's brother was a serial killer? I said that a few cases ago, but I thought that I was wrong. Because of Genshin. I thought that Genshin was a serial killer, but now, with everything, it looks like my original theory was true. Lord Van Zieks, I appreciate this must be hard to take in. But it's the only explanation that fits. The killer that terrorized London a decade ago and became known as the Professor. The man believed to have murdered 5 members of the aristocracy. Wasn't Genshin Soji at all. No, you can't be suggesting. It was in fact the man believed to have been the 5th victim. Lord Clint Van Zieks himself. It's finally open, is it? Pandora's box. That's what they meant by Pandora's box. He knew. Strongheart knew. The Great Van Zieks family, they've been thoroughbreds of the British judiciary for years. And Lord Clint Van Zieks, he was a paragon of justice. But he was actually a mass murderer, a perpetrator of atrocities of the vilest nature. If the general public ever found out, law and order in this country would be finished. My brother? Oh, this is too awful. Poor Lord Van Zieks. I wonder though, did he never suspect? Mr. Naruhodo. Lord Barrick Van Zieks is a brilliant prosecutor. Is it conceivable That he didn't realize what his older brother really was? Order in court. Lord Van Zieks. The professor made use of an enormous hound as his murder weapon. Tell me, did your brother own a dog? Yes, he did. Balmung, he was a well-known hunting dog. People called him a giant. I don't believe this. When my brother would go hunting in the forest of the grounds behind the house, he always took Balmung. After Clint's death, the creature passed away too, almost as if he were following his master. He was a magnificent hunting dog, worthy of the jewel stud collar around his neck. That's what it was, the Hound of the Baskervilles. A jewel-studded collar. That collar that Shamspeare was after, that's right, though sadly, some years ago now, it was stolen by a thief who broke into the house one night. A jewel-studded collar, stolen by a thief. It so happens that myself and my colleagues have come across such a collar during our time in London. How could you? There was an old emblem attached to the collar too, made of pure gold. That's it. It was topped with a small crown and bore an ornate capital letter B. What? An emblem bearing the initial B? Oh my, you know it. It's the insignia of the Baskerville family. What? The Baskerville? Why is that name coming up now? Baskerville is the family name of my late brother's widow. That pure gold emblem was an heirloom which Clint acquired upon their marriage. There can be no doubt then, the collar you've described was Balmung's. The family insignia of Lord Clint Van Zieks' widow. There was a considerable amount of blood on the collar when we saw it. Since we know the dog was used for hunting, it could have been from its quarry, of course. But it could equally have been from human prey. So is it true then? Clint Van Zieks really was the professor. Impossible. These Japanese are making it all up to exonerate their own. So, in fact, the person responsible for these murders of nobles and royals was a noble himself. And that threatened to be an enormous scandal that would irrevocably destabilize British society. Remember what I said a few cases ago? Whoever the serial killer was, the fact that they tried to hide it so badly, it was somebody important that they didn't want to reveal to the public. My father knew that and was using it to negotiate his way out of the unjust charges brought against him. But at the very last hour, those he bargained with betrayed him, slaying him mercilessly on foreign soil. Well, can you deny it, Lord Strongheart? 10 years have passed. And still now, the 6 million inhabitants of our great capital rest easy believing that justice was done. That, though, his anonymity remains. The diabolical murderer was caught and executed. Very well, then. You may have the truth. He's gonna tell us the truth? What the hell is going on? Tell me then. Tell me what Clint really was. Lord Clint Van Zieks was too pure of heart. When he became a prosecutor and went in pursuit of black roots of crime, he drove himself into a corner. He came to the uncomfortable realization that to fight the most fiendish of criminals requires one to become even more fiendish oneself. Clint. The 19th century was a truly miraculous 100 years for Great Britain, and indeed the whole world. New industry, new technology, and with the birth of the Metropolitan Police Service, new law and order. But these dazzling new developments meant ever deeper shadows were cast on society. Water sullied by factories, air thick with noxious fumes and crime, growing daily to fill the darkness. Lord Clint Van Zieks made it to his mission to combat that darkness. But as time went on, it slowly ate his soul, until eventually, he was consumed. So he went insane. It's ironic, really, and somewhat surprising, that the truth has once again been unearthed. By a Japanese. Once again? What do you mean? Genshin knew. 10 years ago, your father, Genshin Asoji, turned up at my office one night. The professor? Yes, beyond all shadow of doubt, you must issue a warrant to search his home at once. Don't be absurd. The man comes from one of our country's most illustrious families. He's a paragon of justice here in the capital. Yes, that's the point. That's why none of you British can see it. He's using his noble status as a diversion while he commits these atrocious crimes behind the scenes. Do you have evidence? Nothing definitive as yet, but he keeps an enormous savage hound on the estate. We need the full support of the judiciary for this. We're up against a member of the aristocracy. So a large family estate has a fierce guard dog. You should know that's commonplace here in Britain. I'm sorry, but I can't possibly put Scotland Yard onto this based on the tenacious accusations of a visiting student. So Genshin went to confront him, but then what happened? So I turned down Asoji's plea, and as a result, he took it upon himself to visit the Van Zeek's mansion on his own. We can only imagine now what happened between the two men. Though we know the outcome, of course. Lord Clint Van Zeek's perished. I don't believe this. So, in actual fact, Kazuma-sama's father did. He made the late Lord Van Zeeks meet the same fate. He put a permanent end to the professor's killings by taking the drastic measure of ending the perpetrator's life. As soon as I heard, I hurried to the mansion. When I arrived, it was easy to grasp what had happened. And? What about the will? Asoji must have already taken it. Nothing of that nature was found at the scene. We had no idea of the existence of such a document at that time. My God, this conspiracy is massive. This game has such an amazing story. I was the only person who knew of the true identity of the professor. So, I resolved to keep it a secret, and to guard the secret to the bitter end. So you're admitting to it, that you were behind it all. It was you, then, who pinned the crime on my father. I did what needed to be done in order to protect the law and order of the British Empire. By framing it an innocent man? Even if that meant employing an unforgivable ruse. Then it was you who arranged this fabricated evidence. I ordered that detective to take care of it, whilst keeping the truth from him, naturally. Gregson. Obviously, he opposed me at first. Are you off your rocker? We can't do something like that. There's no question that it was Asoji who murdered Lord Van Zeeks. The house staff have made statements that they saw the man running from the mansion that night. Yes, well, I have no doubt it was that Japanese fellow. But we haven't got a sort of conclusive evidence against the man. And worse than that, he doesn't keep a dog. So we're short of a murder weapon to boot. And we're short on time, Gregson. We must put a stop to this man's rampage for the good of the country. So we'll use whatever means necessary. Do I make myself clear, detective? Blimey. So that night 10 years ago, when I was attacked by those thugs in the back streets, and Genshin's ring was taken, that was him, was it? That was Gregson, and some hired help. The detective handed the stolen ring to Dr. Wilson, who feigned his discovery from the victim's stomach during that autopsy. And in the light of the decisive evidence, Mr. Asoji was found guilty of the charges brought against him. However, behind the scenes, he had actually already struck a deal with his accusers, in which he agreed to silently accept the charges. But I just don't believe that part. As far as I know the man, my father despised such underhand dealings. It was extremely easy to make him comply. You see, he had one crippling weakness. His son. What weakness? Isn't it obvious? You, Kazuma Soji, I knew it. Me? Perhaps you have no desire to return to your homeland, Asoji. What? Though I hear you have a 14-year-old son. Agree to cooperate and accept your guilt without contention, and you will see Japan and your son again. You scoundrel. Whether you choose wisely or not, it will be a closed trial by order of Her Majesty. So whatever rash claims you might make in court, we'll have no trouble in stifling them. There's only one outcome for you, Asoji, the gallows. Don't forget that I still have a weapon at my disposal. A document revealing a truth that I know you're desperate to keep hidden. Yes, it hadn't escaped my mind, which is the only reason I'm willing to bargain with you. I only want to protect this country's law and order. You understand. So, what's it to be, Asoji? My god, Lord Strongheart is such a piece of crap. Kazuma. Lord Strongheart is such a terrible person. He did it for me. And as I told him at the time, my motive was simply to protect Britain from the damage the truth would do. But this doesn't explain who killed Genshin to protect the country's law and order at any cost. And look, he's smiling about that. He's happy he condemned Genshin. What a scumbag.
Objection!
I've never dared let myself even consider this possibility until now. But in the light of all this treachery, I have to ask. The mastermind behind the Reaper of the Bailey. Was it you, Lord Mael Strongheart? A rather brilliant idea, wouldn't you say, Lord Barrack Van Zeeks? That the spirit of your late brother, that paragon of justice, should return to reap justice for his sibling. Could there be a more appetizing tale for London's masses, I ask you? What? What brazen... I knew that you'd play the part to perfection. But your role really wasn't that of some embodiment of death, no. You were London's guardian angel. An angel with bloody hands? I think not. Those who had cooperated with me already were too happy to participate in my plan. Inspector Gregson, Dr. Wilson. My minions worked tirelessly to ensure that the finger of guilt could never come to rest on you. It's all thanks to them that you were exalted as the demigod the Reaper became. But Dr. Wilson left Britain 4 years ago, when he was invited to work in Japan. That's right. So I had to employ the services of his young protege after that. Dr. Courtney Scythe. Dr. Scythe. So what with the execution of the Professor and the subsequent reign of the Reaper of the Bailey? I've successfully safeguarded law and order in our mighty capital for the past decade. That is everything. But who killed Genshin? Who shot him? My lords, ladies, and gentlemen, I do hereby confess, it was I who sired the concept of the Reaper. However, let me say in my defense, it was all for the preservation of law and order across the entire empire. This is not law and order, this is madness. An unforgivable collection of crimes, but still, all those who died at the Reaper's hand were rotten to the core anyway. It was all in the aid of keeping London safe. That's why Gina was never targeted, because she was innocent. There is no one left now who can reveal the precise truth of what happened 10 years ago. Therefore, this trial can go no further. Now, I would like to entreat all those present. Beyond those 4 walls, nobody need know the truth. Even Her Majesty must be protected from this. I trust you all appreciate the importance of my request. it is, of course, for the good of the country. But what about Genshin's murder? He has blood on his hands. He killed Genshin. Genshin... Can he do this? He is the Lord Chief Justice. If the Queen pardons him, if it's on orders from the Queen, there's nothing we can do. At that point, he's gonna escape justice. But all the people that were killed by the Reaper were bad people, yes. But Gregson was killed. Gregson's murder, that wasn't fair. What ended up happening to him? Wilson, they were complicit in the conspiracy, but they weren't killers. Did they deserve to die? And then what about Genshin? Genshin didn't deserve that. Can the trial really end now?
Hold it!
I have one last question. It's gonna be who shot his father. For the accused, Lord Van Zieks. What? Of course, I know that you're a highly accomplished prosecutor. So if I find it hard to believe that you didn't have any doubts at all, that you never suspected your older brother. Yes, the same thought occurred to me. It was only once, but yes, I couldn't say that I never had my doubts. My brother's sense of justice was extremely strong, perhaps too strong, I observed. At that time, there were members of the aristocracy who were bleeding the country dry for their own gain. Remember what I said about the aristocracy? A lot of the aristocrats were really bad people. They treated the working class really horribly. They saw the working class as peasants. The working class weren't the aristocrats are different than just rich people. The aristocrats were rich people that were born into a specific family. And so they had specific privileges. Upon their birth, they had specific privileges granted to them by the government and by society. They could do certain things that people of lower classes could not do. And so even before World War I, most of the generals during World War I were aristocratic generals. They were appointed as generals simply because of their status. The aristocrats treated, peasants and the working class horribly throughout European history. I know there were some good and honorable aristocrats. I'm not saying all of them were terrible people, but a lot of them did really bad things. And I mean, the French Revolution blew up in their face. The French Revolution, they did some really bad things in France. And then the French Revolution got out of control. And then when the revolutionaries took power, they went crazy. They went crazy with bloodlust, and the revolutionaries themselves started doing some really bad things. And since they were nobles, they were untouchable. For my brother, it was a source of great turmoil. And coincidentally, at the same time, the professor began his terrifying reign. During the time of the professor killings, my brother did not appear to be himself. And that made you suspect. Yes. But it was only once, not more. Only once, really. Clint wasn't the culprit. That was my conclusion at the time. And I still believe that now. Do you have any evidence to support that idea? The third victim was the Lord Chief Justice at the time. It was he who had recognized my brother's potential and trained him as a prosecutor. No matter what the circumstances, it's unthinkable that my brother could have killed his friend and mentor. That will do. Neither Clint Van Zieks nor Genshin Osoji still walk this earth. However much we debate this matter now, we cannot hope to reach a conclusion. But there are only two extant pieces of evidence from the time. The woe-begone ring that acted as the incriminating evidence to condemn Genshin Osoji, and the 3-page last will and testament penned in black ink and left behind by the man. The wretched truth of what had happened is exactly as I have explained. What if Lord Strongheart was the one who killed the Lord Chief, just so he could be the Lord Chief? Later today, I will present myself at the Ministry of Justice for whatever sanction is deemed appropriate. That is all. Court is adjourned. Well, you didn't declare it.
Objection!
You didn't declare Barrick not guilty, and also what happened to Genshin? Thank you, Kazuma. Me. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have made this 11th hour discovery. What discovery? My lord, I'm afraid I must insist the trial continues. I beg your pardon? As the court has been reminded today already, we must stop at nothing to uncover the whole truth. And to that end, one particular statement made by somebody in this courtroom moments ago revealed a very subtle contradiction. What contradiction? But all I did was ask the accused one simple question. Well, it began with Lord Van Zeeks and his recollection about his brother. But Lord Strongheart didn't permit the defendant to speak at length. I merely pointed out that we can draw no further useful conclusions here. So where on earth is this contradiction? One of them definitely just said something contradictory. It's time to identify... Oh. So I had to load up a save and go back because I hit X too fast and I chose without even deciding. One of them definitely said something contradictory. It's time to identify who. Okay, this is the part I messed up on. I accidentally pressed X on that and it hit Lord Van Zeeks. One of them said something contradictory. It's time to identify who. Okay, let's see. Either Strongheart or Zeke said something contradictory. Let's go all the way to the top. It was my only once, but yes, I couldn't say that I never had my doubts. My brother's sense of justice was extremely strong, perhaps too strong, I observed. At the time, there were members of the aristocracy who were bleeding the country dry for their own gain. And since they were nobles, they were untouchable. For my brother, it was a source of great turmoil. And coincidentally, at the same time, the professor began his terrifying reign. During the time of the professor killings, my brother did not appear to be himself. Yes, but it was only once, not more. Clint wasn't the culprit. That was my conclusion at the time, and I still believe that now. Do you have any evidence to support that idea? The third victim was the Lord Chief Justice at the time. It was he who had recognized my brother's potential and trained him as a prosecutor. No matter what the circumstances, unthinkable that my brother would have killed his friend and mentor. That will do. Neither Clint Van Zeeks nor Genshin Soji still walk this earth. However much we debate this matter now, we cannot hope to reach a conclusion. There are only two extant pieces of evidence from the time. The woebegone ring that acted as the incriminating evidence to condemn Genshin Soji, and the 3-page last will and testament penned in the black ink and left behind by the man. The wretched truth of what happened is exactly as I've explained. Later today, I will present myself at the Ministry of Justice. Appropriate. And then there's the objection. The third victim was the Lord Chief Justice at the time. Did Lord Strongheart have him killed? Was that the one person that Clint didn't kill? It was he who had recognized my brother's potential and trained him as a prosecutor. No matter what the circumstances, unthinkable that my brother could have killed his friend and mentor. But I don't think we really have something to contradict that, do we? No, this is his autopsy. Have this old photo here, but I don't think that that's gonna really do anything. The woebegone ring that acted as the incriminating evidence to condemn Genshin Soji, and the 3-page last will and testament penned in black ink and left behind by the man. Wait. Let me look at that one more time. I Genshin Soji hereby request that upon my death. Wait. Wait a second. Look! There's only 2 pages to the will and testament. Wait. The 3-page last will and testament penned in black ink and left behind by the man. He took a page. Like I thought he did. That's it. Because he remembers how many pages there were initially and that got him in the lie. Lord Strongheart. It was Lord Strongheart, I'm sure of it. Something he said was slightly off. Come on, Ryunosuke. Think back over his words. Find the problem. Neither Clint Van Zeeks nor Genshin Soji still walk to serve. However much we debate this matter now, we cannot hope to reach a conclusion. There are only 2 extant pieces of evidence from the time. The Weebegone ring that acted as the criminating evidence to condemn Genshin Soji, and the 3-page last will and testament penned in black ink and left behind by the man. I got it now. Lord Strongheart, would you care to explain? Explain what, Counsel? Among the statements you made just a few moments ago, something you said was inconsistent with a certain piece of evidence we have. Inconsistent? And whilst an inconsistency remains, the defense has a right to pursue an explanation. Ryunosuke, what? Let me warn you about the statements you are making, Counsel. They may very well prove fatal. You claim my words contain a contradiction with what piece of evidence I asked you, the Asoji papers.
Take that!
This here is the will left behind by Mr. Asoji. The 2-paged will. What? Yet moments ago, your precise words were the 3-paged last will and testament. Ah. Could it be that originally there was a 3rd page, and they took it? For a moment, I thought perhaps you identified something worthwhile, but it's a mere trifle, I see. A trifle? Governor Caden. Eh? What can I do for you, sir? You were present when the Japanese man, penned his last will and testament. I was there for sure. I remember the black, Wareham-like scrawls to this day. And I'm quite certain, my lord, that there was a 3rd page at the time. Oh, he just contradicted him. What? What? Only the first 2 pages were the actual will, though. If I mind correctly, the 3rd was a message to his lad back in Japan. For legal purposes, we required only his will. And we wouldn't have wanted any uncomfortable words about Britain to get back to Japan, eh? So it was decided that the 3rd page ought only be sent.
Objection!
How dare you make that decision? I had a right to know what it said, to hear my father's final words to me. The courtroom is no place for sentimentality, Counsel. As it happens, I have the 3rd page of the document with me here now. What are the chances of that? My father's message. It will be given to you at the end of these proceedings. It'll be too late once the trial is over. We need to know what it says now. Even the slightest thing may give us a vital clue. My lord, the defense calls for Genshin Soji's last words to his son to be read out loud before the court now. Your request is denied. The inevitable Malden words can be of no consequence now. Why does he not want that 3rd page read?
Objection!
The prosecution agrees. The court should know the content of that message. Every possible piece of evidence must be thoroughly examined. Very well, then. Governor Caden, you will read the 3rd page of the document for all present to hear. Yes, sir. Only, I should point out, my lord, that I cannot actually read a Worm language. It's in Japanese. This beautiful handwriting, shame on you, Barry. Migatoba is here. If I could be of assistance here, I would be happy to translate the words into English for the court. Father, you're still here, are you, Dr. Migatoba? Naturally, I consider myself as a member of the judiciary, a bit a lowly one. But perhaps I should quietly withdraw after I've translated Genshin's message. Strongheart really doesn't want that message read. Your cooperation is much appreciated. What does it say? Kazuma, the truth is shrouded in darkness, a darkness only our clan's great sword can pierce. Mighty Karuma, twist thy head and watch them fall, all thy mortal foes. That's the end of the message, it would seem. The Clint's will is inside the sword. Remember what I said earlier? The sword, because a Japanese sword, you can take the handle off of it. A haiku poem, twist thy head. Father, what is Karuma? The name of the Asoji clan's famous sword. A razor-sharp blade known to all, passed down for generations, and embodies the Japanese spirit. It's not known to me. It's the katana sword that was submitted as evidence earlier in these proceedings. Oh my god, I can't believe that I was right on that. The one worn by the prosecution counsel when he confronted Inspector Gregson. The last will and testament against Shinsoji that Mr. Vigil claims disappeared after the convict's execution. It seems that there was a third page to it. All these procrastinations are beginning to try my patience. Adjournment of this court is long overdue. As thy presiding judge, I have been as accommodating as possible of the will of the courtroom. However, despite all that, no new information has come to light. It's in the sword. In pursuit of justice, Lord Clint Van Zeeks tragically lost all sense of morality. When he murdered his former mentor, clearly he was already devoid of his normal faculties. I think that Strongheart murdered the former Lord Chief Justice. Clint was a serial killer, but he killed 3 people. He didn't kill the Lord Chief Justice. That's who Strongheart did, and Strongheart's trying to pin that on Clint.
Objection!
How dare you? I refuse to believe that of my brother. The thing is, remember in the original Ace Attorney game, a similar thing happened where there was a serial killer, and one of the people that was killed was not killed by the serial killer, but instead was pinned on him by a corrupt police chief. Too much time has passed. We cannot ever hope to know more than we do now. Especially since the alleged will that he penned in his final notes appear to have been lost forever. Lord Strongheart, you appear to be in something of a hurry to wrap things up. I wonder why. We've heard you state time and time again during these proceedings that everything you did was in the interest of protecting British law and order. And I stand by that. Without the Reaper, we could never have achieved the reduction in crime the capital has seen.
Objection!
What about Inspector Gregson then? And Dr. Wilson. They were no criminals. You used them to achieve your ends, and then you had them killed. However you dress it up, there was nothing fair or just about that. Lord Strongheart, what exactly is it that you're hiding? He killed the previous Lord Chief Justice, Dr. Mikatoba. Were you not to quietly withdraw after the translation of your former associate's will? In this courtroom, no argument carries weight unless it is supported by evidence. And it would seem that the defense has no more evidence to present. In which case, I hereby order all discourse from these proceedings to be struck from the record. This is my last chance. Mr. Naruhodo, I have to present some decisive evidence now, or it's all over. But can I present evidence? Wait, my lord. As it happens, the defense does have evidence to present. What? Don't be absurd. I didn't save before this part, so I'm taking a bit of a risk here, but I feel very confident. There is nothing of relevance remaining from the time.
Objection!
It's high time that you realize something, my lord. This gentleman has an uncanny habit of producing evidence at the final hour that had escaped everyone else's attention. Nonsense. What is it, Ryunosuke? What do you have? It's not what I have, it's what you have. I dare say, the final decisive piece of evidence that will reveal the whole truth about this rotten tale. How can you... Decisive? Well, it would appear there's no escaping it now, my lord. Let it be so then. Present whatever you think you have that you can settle this decade-old enigma if you're capable. What exactly is this evidence? that the defense claims to be so decisive. The sword.
Take that!
What did I say, counsel? If you're capable, were my words. And this evidence clearly demonstrates you're not. You're capable of only destroying your own argument. So it failed last time when I tried to present the sword, but it has to be the sword. Kuruma, the truth is shrouded in darkness, a darkness only our clan's great source can pierce. Mighty Kuruma, twist thy head and watch them fall, all thy mortal foes. Oh, this is new? Mighty Kuruma, twist thy head and watch them fall, all thy mortal foes. That's the proper way to use the sword, is it? Maybe I should try it. It hurts my neck, that's the trouble. Mr. Naruhodo, if I might make a suggestion, I think perhaps it doesn't mean your head. Oh. I once studied the history and development of the katana some time ago, and as I'm sure you're probably aware, the sword's head is the part of the very end of the hilt. It's written as head in Japanese, but it's pronounced as Kashira, I believe. Kashira. So Mr. Asoji's words really mean twist the butt of the hilt. You don't think? Ah. Look what's inside it. So that's what I had to do. I had to examine the sword before I presented it. Is that a tightly wound sheet of parchment? Let's look. Look, it's Scarlet Ink. It's written in Scarlet Ink. I penned this, my last will and testament, in the final moments before my inevitable and willing death. This is it, isn't it? Mr. Naruhodo, look at the signature at the end. Clint Van Zeeks. And the date, 10 years ago on that fateful night. So for 10 years, it's been silently concealed inside Kuruma and nobody knew. The last will and testament of Lord Clint Van Zeeks. Let's read it, wait. Oh my goodness. What? Look at this. This is unbelievable. The last will and testament of Lord Clint Van Zeek's been hidden inside the great sword by Kuruma for years, a trump card left behind by Gensen Asoji. Oh my god, I can't believe it. It was inside this sword. I had it right. Okay, let's see here. What does this say? Oh, I can't read it. It's not letting me present. Okay, well, I guess I mean, I can present, but I can't read it, I mean. Okay, let's just present it then.
Take that!
It's over for you, Strongheart. There's a single piece of evidence that can clarify what really happened 10 years ago. The last will and testament of Lord Clint Van Zeeks. Ha! A wonderful, astute observation, I'm sure. But in case it had escaped your notice, that document was lost long ago. That's right, it was. Only, I have it right here, discovered just moments ago. Impossible, that can't be. Everything that's happened comes back to this will. This document is the key that will unlock the entire mystery. Look at him, that's the first time that we actually really see, we see him panicking, Lord Strongarm. My brother's last will and testament. Where did you find that? It was rolled up inside this. Inside Kuruma. That ultimate weapon Gensen Asoji obtained has lain undisturbed in the hilt of the sword all these years, just waiting for the right time to emerge, to reveal the truth. The signature and seal certainly look official. My god, it's true. It's my brother's handwriting. There can be no mistake. I forbid the contents of that document from being read out. Do you hear me? I strictly forbid it.
Objection!
You can't do that, my lord. This document could explain everything. That document could literally destroy the meaning of justice in this country. I demand that you hand it over to me at once. Why? What are you trying to hide? Could it be that you already know what's written on this page? What are you implying? Court is adjourned of immediate effect. Clear the courtroom. No.
Objection!
Do that, my lord, and you'll suffer a fatal blow as Lord Chief Justice. I beg your pardon. Forcibly ending a trial without good reason, and not any trial, a close trial by order of Her Majesty the Queen. To defy the monarch's will is treason. I want to know what's on that paper. Lord Clint Van Zieks really did pen a will that day. It's exactly as a young Japanese man said. Read it out, now. We have a right to hear what's in that will, a right and a duty. Well, well, my lord. It would rather appear as though proceedings aren't going to go quite as you'd hope. Look at how Mikatoba is trolling him. You fools. Go ahead, Ryunosuke, read it. The prosecution gives it full support. Very well, then. No, for God's sake. No! I penned this, my last will and testament, in the final moments before my inevitable and willing death. The hour is 11 p.m., and I sit at my writing desk in my office. My good friend Asoji stands at my shoulder. He has expressed his intent to invoke the dying ritual of the duel, that I may depart this world with honor, an honor of which I am utterly undeserving. The Japanese are a truly merciful people. I, Clint Van Zieks, Lord of the Manor of the Van Zieks estate, hereby confess to the following. I am the killer who has come to be known in society as the Professor, guilty of 4 counts of murder. I will not hear discourse of the corruption rife among the aristocracy, which is to me as one of them so apparent. However, 6 months ago, I took the life of a member of the House of Lords at the heart of the depravity. A demon who habitually sacrificed a common man to further his own interests, abusing his position of power. The law is impotent against such vile avarice. Only a fellow demon can rid society of this menace. That demon was my quarry, upon whom I willingly set my great hound. But though I am a hunter of some experience, I am a poor felon, it seems. My guilt was at once recognized by another, and I became subject to his extortion. He held over me the threat of exposing my wicked crime to my beloved wife and brother. Under that threat, I have done this man's bidding for months now, killing those he demanded I kill. As I watched my former mentor perish before my eyes in the jaws of the hound I commanded, I realized that I had lost the last shred of decency within me, and sunk to the level of a wild beast. So Strongheart was blackmailing him. He knew about some of the murders, and he blackmailed him to kill the rest of the people. There is no path back to the light. Be it I or my dear friend Asoji who dies this night, I am eternally damned. To my extortioner, Mael Strongheart, may you feel the jaws of the beast at your throat every time you swallow. So now we know, yes, Clint Van Zieks was a murderer, but somebody was directing him and naming his victims. His extortioner, Lord Mael Strongheart. It was you. Lord Strongheart, a moment ago, you claimed that what you did, that what the court has just heard could destroy justice in this country, but you weren't trying to protect justice at all. All you were trying to do was conceal the secret of your true nature and the countless lives you sacrificed up till now. It just didn't make sense to me that the third victim, the former Lord Chief Justice, was my brother's benefactor and a man of lofty principles. As I said, Clint had no possible reason to kill the man. But you did, didn't you, Lord Strongheart? To eliminate the man who stood between you and the office you set your sight on, son. So you used your own hunting dog, Lord Clint Van Zieks, to take him down. It had to be done. London's unsavory shadows are deep, and the arm of the law fails to reach their depths. Crime must be cut off at the roots, but the Lord Chief Justice at the time couldn't see that. He was weak. Lofty principles, you say? Tend to mount to cowardice, if you ask me. Which is why I took his place, in order to fight the crime he was allowing to spread like wildfire. By murdering the man. The Reaper, the Professor, the names make no difference. As I've explained countless times already, it was all done for the furtherance of law and order in London.
Objection!
Are you going to legitimize the murder of my father now too? Ah, Genshin Asoji. Well, that was unfortunate. I had fully intended to send him back to Japan, as we'd agreed. I don't believe you. It was you, wasn't it? You killed him. No, it wasn't me who took your father's life. Then who? On the night following his mock execution, I went to Lowgate Cemetery at 3 in the morning with Jigoku. Judge Jigoku? There had to be a collaborator on the Japanese side to manage Asoji's treatment after his reparation. Jigoku had fierce ambition. It made him easy to manipulate. 10 years ago, after he'd stood trial for the destruction of the witness stand, I had words with him. When I told him the position of Minister of Foreign Affairs could be his, he couldn't agree fast enough. Shishiro, you fool. As you know, Asoji escaped the prison in a closed casket and was subsequently interned. We intended to dig him out of his grave before he ran out of air. But sadly, all did not go to plan. There was an unexpected visitor to the cemetery with his own ideas about digging up graves. Yup. A man who witnessed what nobody was supposed to see. Enoch Drebber. Of course, I knew grave robbers frequent in the London cemeteries. But that grave on that particular night. Blast, if people find out the convict wasn't really executed, the scandal will rock the very foundations of the Empire. Then what do we do? Shoot him, Mr. Jigoku. Shoot Asoji at once. He can't live now that this has happened. He has to go. What are you talking about? You had an agreement. You promised him he could return to Japan. Everything has changed now. If the truth got out because of this, both of us would be finished. Forever. Come on, Jigoku, do it. Pull the trigger. Shoot! So Jigoku killed him. Jigoku shot Asoji from the shadows. The grave robber was so close, the blood sprayed over his coat. He fled as fast as his legs would carry him. Then Jigoku and I put Asoji's body back in the grave, from which he just emerged. When I later learned of the waxwork modeler's presence at the scene as well, I made her swear to two things. Never to remove the professor's mask, and never to speak of the events of that night. And with that, the secret was buried along with Asoji's corpse. So, now you know what really happened in Lowgate Cemetery that night. My god, this guy is one of the most evil characters I've ever seen in a game, definitely. I think he's the most evil Ace Attorney character of all time. It was Jigoku, your Japanese acquaintance, who killed Asoji in the end, you see. He claimed to be the man's friend, but when push came to shove, he pulled the trigger. Just before Mr. Jigoku left the courtroom earlier, he said that the assassin exchange proposal was a demand from his British counterpart, not a request. So you coerced him too, using what happened in the graveyard. By that time, Jigoku was the Minister of Foreign Affairs negotiating international treaties with Britain. You can imagine what would have happened if it came to light he murdered a compatriot 10 years earlier. He would have lost everything. I merely reminded him of that. How do you sleep at night? Exactly. This man's a psycho. These past 10 years, I've fought tirelessly with the darker recesses of London's criminal underworld. and I've used whatever means necessary to ensure that justice prevails and law and order reigns supreme.
Objection!
That couldn't be further from the truth. The fact is, you haven't fought crime at all. How dare you? I saved Clint Van Zeeks from dishonor in his death. You blackmailed him into murdering people.
Objection!
Whilst behind the scenes, you systematically buried anyone who stood in your way. And then, you made my father take the blame. It was unavoidable. It was the only way to protect our justice system and public order. Let's not forget the others you had killed as well. Setting the defendant up as the Reaper to cover up the truth behind the murders of countless more. That's enough! Do you have any idea of the conniving that led to the acquittals of those wretched criminals? We have to fight fire with fire. Our courts can't function without a Reaper. Can't you see all I've done for this country? This has been my struggle.
Objection!
You've done nothing. It's Lord Van Zeeks here who worked tirelessly and justly in court, whilst enduring the disgrace of the Reaper name. That's true. Lord Van Zeeks was the one who punished the criminals, not Strongheart. And Inspector Gregson fraught with anguish for having sullied his hands through a desire to do the right thing. Not to mention Gensen Asoji, who risked his life going in pursuit of the truth you tried to hide. No, the darker recesses of London's underworld were largely filled by you. You little... When will you get it through your thick skulls that it was all for Queen and country? I'm tiring of that excuse. You've consistently twisted the truth for bargaining power to make others do your bidding, nothing more. People who willingly twist the truth and coerce others have no right to call themselves part of the judiciary. I strongly suggest you don't ever talk of justice again. Grr, grr. Dog. Do you guys notice that Strongheart bears some resemblance to Damon Gant? I wonder if Damon Gant is actually his descendant in modern day. What's gonna happen now? I've never had a case where the judge is guilty. Well, well, well. Dear my good fellows, dear me. A well-deserved round of applause, I think, for a quite marvelous performance. What are you talking about? Those delightfully grave expressions, that beautifully pronounced Queen's English. Strongheart has lost it. Really, our friends from the Far East are quite the picture of industriousness. You fraud. Keep your mockery. Please don't misunderstand. It really is exactly as you've both said. What are you trying to say? I have occupied the darker recesses of London's underworld, and how did you put it? Done nothing. I confess it's a little embarrassing to have it pointed out quite so starkly, but yes, I really have done nothing. Which means I can be indicted for nothing. No? What? It's true. Personally, I have committed no crime. I've merely been surrounded by fools who've acted very rashly indeed. You just admitted before to telling Jigoku to shoot a man.
Objection!
You can't get away with that. You've consistently preyed on people's weaknesses. And what? Threatened them? Are you sure it wasn't just bargaining? My god, Strongheart is definitely the most evil Ace Attorney character I've seen. I would like to address all the good lords and ladies and gentlemen of the judiciary here present. I thought that Matthew Ungard was one of the worst, but Strongheart takes things to another level. You all know of these darker recesses in our great capital, and deep down, I believe you also know that to fight those who dwell there requires at least some of us to occupy the darkness ourselves. So let me appeal to your good sense now. Consider this situation with me. If this catalog of horrifying revelations were to become common knowledge among the 6 million inhabitants of London, what might happen? To learn that the infamous murderer of royals and nobles was a respected member of the aristocracy himself. That evidence was fabricated in the scapegoat's trial amid secret negotiations with prosecutors to effect the jailbreak. That the Reaper of the Bailey was an organized group of assassins managed by a Scotland Yard inspector. And finally, that it was all masterminded by the Lord Chief Justice himself. If the general public of Britain knew the truth, all faith in the police and the prosecutor's office would be completely lost, without doubt. Public order in the capital would completely break down. We'd be cast back to lawless days of the last century. Precisely, as it was 100 years ago when 1 in 10 of the population were criminals. Think what we've accomplished since then. A public policing force, a comprehensive set of laws. Don't try to justify all you've done, Strongheart. And if we want to continue to protect this new era of law and order, I say again, we must at times occupy the darkness ourselves. We have successfully identified and apprehended the man responsible for taking Inspector Gregson's life. That is all that was expected of this trial. All these other matters that have been discussed will be eliminated from the minutes of these proceedings in the interest of preserving law and order, and to protect Her Majesty the Queen, of course. Well, my lords, ladies, and gentlemen, what say you? He has a point. The things Lord Strongheart has done are quite unforgivable. But on the other hand, isn't it our duty to maintain law and order in the capital? You can't deny that the threat of the Reaper over the years has done wonders for the crime rate. And by fair means or foul, that's all thanks to Lord Strongheart. Strongheart. Damn! He's getting the audience on his side now. This is not good. Are you hearing this? This is the will of the British judiciary? For your resounding response, friends, I express my heartfelt gratitude. Therefore, in accordance with the overwhelming wishes of the court, the record shall be erased. No. You have to respect the man's ability to turn a situation to his favor. There has to be something we can do. Lord Strongheart really is a master of manipulation. You've conclusively proven his guilt. Yet he still manages to evade justice. I just don't know what we can do. Ryunosuke, it looks like the trial really is going to come to an end now. I'm almost out of options, I think. There's really only one path left open to me. The hell do I do? I gotta save here. Use evidence. Yes, as I know only too well. The only thing that carries any weight in court is hard evidence. But, Mr. Naruhodo, what evidence is there to use at this stage in the trial? I have an idea. I don't know whether anything will come of it, but if there was ever a time for using this particular item we have among the evidence, it's now. A little doll of Mr. Sholmes in hair form. If I've ever been told to tug its ears if I find myself at a dead end. Let's try.
Take that!
Oh my. Yes, Mr. Sholmes asked if you had that with you earlier. We've exposed all of Lord Strongheart's wrongdoings now. I have no doubt that Mr. Sholmes had already deduced exactly how the truth would unfurl. So I think it must be time for the great detective to take center stage, don't you? Yes, absolutely. Let's take the hair by the ears then, and heave. Alright, here goes. Heave. Ow, 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 ow. My dear fellows, must I remind you every time a gentle tug will suffice? Mr. Sholmes, you're looking in quite the wrong direction, Mr. Naruhodo. Because I'm over here. Ah, Mr. Naruhodo, he's... What the? It's Mr. Sholmes. How is he here? What the? I wasn't expecting you back, Sholmes. Delighted to be here again, Lord Strongheart. What? What is the meaning of this? Bailiff, seize him. Put that man in irons. This is a close court. You've been warned once already, man. They can't get him. What the? We can't get a hold of him, my lord. It's a projection. We just go right through him. I'm afraid your efforts are wasted. You see? The great detective you see before you is composed entirely of light and shadow, an image, if you will. Mr. Naruhodo, I must congratulate you on your fine deductions. Mr. Sholmes, what on earth is... Are you familiar, I wonder, with the invention known as a telephone? Well, yes. I hear that some public telephones have been installed recently in Tokyo. The sound of the speaker's voice is converted to an electrical signal and transmitted instantly to another place. Quite, sound are transmitted. So could not images keep them company, I mused? Iris and I did some modest experimentation to develop such a device specifically for this very day. Modest experimentation, Mr. Sholmes, what a modest description. And somewhat incidentally, I thought we might just as well transmit an entire scene. Somewhat incidentally, Mr. Sholmes, now you're just being immodest. Do you mean to say you're not actually here, Sholmes? Ah, I knew my trusty partner would have no trouble grasping the concept. Except he's grasping the stand to steady himself after his shock arrival. Poor father, I would have hoped he might have been forewarned, being the great detective's great partner. Leave my courtroom at once, get out, or I swear to you. Dear me, you on the other hand, Lord Strongheart, appear to have a very poor grasp of the situation. Allow me to reiterate, I am not here. Which would, I hope, lead naturally to one asking. Where exactly are you? The very question I was awaiting. I am at present enjoying the air in a rather splendid garden. A garden? Not just any garden, you understand. A garden at Buckingham Palace. The Queen. What? You can't be. Buckingham Palace? What's Buckingham Palace, Miss Susato? I've never heard of it. Do you even read the news, Mr. Naruhodo? Mr. Sholmes? Is Iris with you there? Well now, Iris is currently enjoying some tea. With Her Majesty. Her Majesty? Not just any Her Majesty, you understand. Her Majesty, the Queen of the British Empire. What? What? The Queen will override everything. What on earth is this all about? Buckingham Palace is Her Majesty the Queen's residence in London, Mr. Naruhodo. Order in court. I demand immediate silence. Her Majesty the Queen. You can't be. I mean, no. This is some sort of unforgivable, distasteful trickery by a third-rate detective, that's all. Unforgivable, distasteful trickery. One apt description. Close court session attended by elite members of the judiciary is a rare event. I presume that Her Majesty would be more than a little curious about the proceedings. So, I decided to show her. Everything. From start to finish. Huh? You showed her? Indeed. By dint of the Herlock Sholmes remote cinematograph. You meddling kids. This is some kind of nightmare. Just as I appear to be standing before you, regaling you talk of my latest invention. No doubt you've inferred that the reverse is also true. You don't mean... Her Majesty has seen and heard every moment of the proceedings. I assume there will be no objection, after all. Every trial in this country is conducted under the auspices of Her Majesty, as you know. You... I confess I'm quite impatient to hear Her Majesty's opinion about the unforgivable, distasteful trickery in which you've been engaging over the past 10 years. No, I was merely... Oh, so sorry to keep you all waiting. Vicky and I had so much to talk about. That's Queen Victoria, who she's talking about, Vicky. Iris, there you are. In fact, I have a little message here from Her Majesty. A message? Well then, if everyone is sitting comfortably, forthwith, and with immediate effect, all authority previously afforded to male Strongheart is hereby revoked forevermore. Furthermore, he will be prosecuted for crimes against his country in a public trial by jury in the coming days. A public trial. No more close trials. No more secrets. So it seems Her Majesty doesn't believe we need to fight fire with fire. Justice in this country needn't be administered from the shadows at all. Mael Strongheart, the darkness you fostered to conceal your despicable actions these last 10 years is a thing of the past now. After today, your brand of law and order has no future, because no longer are you the Lord Chief Justice. In the eyes of the law and of Her Majesty the Queen, you are nothing but a criminal. Oh! Adjourned! 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 Court is adjourned! Oh, he broke it. Oh. What the? What the hell? I thought that was gonna fall on top of him. Lord Clint Van Zeeks left a will in which he confessed to everything. When those words came out of Asoji's mouth, it deranged me completely. I knew I must do anything and everything in my power to contain the situation. But I couldn't find the damn document. I searched his cell, but it wasn't there. Which precipitated the jailbreak plot it proceeded. What do you mean? The need to obtain that will was all-consuming. I was sure that if I facilitated Asoji's escape, he would emerge with the will somewhere on his person. But despite searching his limp body in the cemetery that night, it still eluded me. It never even crossed my mind that it was concealed in the sword's hilt. The new Lord Chief Justice should be Barrack. What pains me now is that my brother left this world without a word to me. I'm sorry, Lord Van Zeeks. In point of fact, I think perhaps that isn't the case. Sorry? How can that be? There is more to his last will and testament. What? As I confront the prospect of my demise, I feel bitter regret for my younger brother. Barrack, you have always looked up to me, and now you follow in my footsteps to become a prosecutor. It is my fervent wish that my unspeakable deeds should not hinder your advancement. I ask not for understanding, for none could understand my depravity. I ask only for forgiveness. Asoji is a fine detective, and a hunter worthy of respect. He has agreed to honor my final two wishes. The first is that this document survives. The second, I cannot commit to paper. I have confessed my sins to my wife. May she find resolution in my death. With my eternal gratitude to my Japanese friend, I rest my quill. Clint Van Zeeks. Clint. Mael Strongheart. You colluded with Shishiro Jigoku in a criminal plot so immense it spanned the oceans. And you cold-heartedly murdered all those who knew the truth about what happened 10 years ago. But why did you set about that now, a whole decade later? To ascend to the very peak. These last 10 years made me realize being the Lord Chief Justice wasn't enough, short of becoming Her Majesty's Attorney General. I could have no real power to affect the changes needed in this country. And for that promotion, I needed to ensure no remnants of the past remained. So he basically got rid of them to make sure they don't come back to haunt him. He wanted to get rid of all witnesses, all people who knew about his involvement. How could you? I like everything to run smoothly, in the exact manner that I prescribe. Like a well-oiled machine, like a clock. And I was just a step away. And for your ambition to succeed. Did you even bother to count the number of brilliant people you had killed? Ah, Mr. Reaper, are you not forgetting something? Such as? You very much adopted your usual prosecutor-like demeanors in the proceedings now. But the reality of the situation is that you are the defendant in this trial. Ah. However, the presiding judge would appear to have fallen from the bench, as it were. May I suggest, therefore, that we entrust the final adjudication to an old friend, odd Santa Claus judge. My lord. He's back. As a member of the judiciary, I have been following the proceedings from the gallery. And I must say, I shan't ever forget the extraordinary battle between good and evil that I witnessed here today. The old gavel is back. The darkness that has blighted justice in our land these past 10 years has at last been dispelled. Thanks, in no small part, to the efforts of a bright young star from the East. Defense Counsel Naruhodo. Yes, my lord. On behalf of everyone here present in the Old Bailey, I give you my heartfelt thanks. You're too kind, my lord. The first time I faced you in court, just under a year ago now, I had the faintest of intimations that if British justice, so warped and twisted over its long history, is finally known to change, this might just be the man to do it. What? But at the time, I wouldn't allow myself to acknowledge the possibility. I couldn't overcome my hatred of the Japanese after the circumstances of my brother's death. Mr. Naruhodo, allow me to apologize for countless discourtesies on my part. You are a lawyer of boundless talent. Oh, Lord Van Zeeks. He apologized. When I first arrived in Great Britain, I was literally a nobody, certainly not a lawyer. The truth is, my fortunes have entirely been made by the miraculous people I've met. My best friend, Kazuma Soji, who led me here to Britain in the first place. My loyal and ever-patient judicial assistant, Miss Susato, who helped me study to become a lawyer. The brilliant Lord Van Zeeks, who never failed to challenge his Nipponese rival. And not to mention, the exceptional master of logic and reasoning, who showed me the true art of deduction, Mr. Shones. Saving the best for last, Mr. Naruhodo. What a relief. I'm well aware that without all these people's help and support, I wouldn't be where I am today. The truth is a guiding light that always leads to happiness. I've lived by that principle for a long time now, but actually, it's not true. The truth can also cause great pain, sometimes even leave people on the brink of despair. And for that reason, there are those who feel the need to hide the truth, who do it instinctively even. But as soon as we allow our eyes to settle on something other than the truth, the darkness takes hold. And from there it grows, until eventually it makes us blind to the guiding light of the truth altogether. So that's why it's my belief that we must all resolve never to avert our eyes from what is just and true. so that we can continue to walk the straight and narrow path ahead. Well, I must excuse myself now. Before I go, Mr. Naruhodo, let me compliment you on your grand opus. What? Without your beautifully composed case against Lord Strongheart, Her Majesty would have been able to act. Thanks to you and your fellows, the haunting undertones of corrupting British justice system has been silenced. Thank you very much. So, until our paths cross again somewhere. Well then, it would appear that this long trial has finally come to an end. My apologies for any anxiety caused, my lord. I'm quite sure we shall meet again here in the courtroom before long, Prosecutor Beric Van Zieks. In conclusion of these proceedings, I hereby declare the defendant Beric Van Zieks not guilty. We did it! The craziest trial ever in an Ace Attorney game. We did it. That was the best case I've ever played in an Ace Attorney game. I've played the originals. This is my favorite case of all time. Definitely. This one. That is all. Court is adjourned. What a great story in this game. What an amazing, beautiful story. And the thing is, there was not even barely any voice actors. Everything was text, but yet the story was so beautifully written. 4th November, 4:21 p.m. The Old Bailey. Defendant's Antechamber. It really is all over. But did I sacrifice too much? Mr. Naruhodo, I really must congratulate you. It was a truly splendid performance. Honestly, I couldn't be happier for you. Oh, thank you very much. But I really couldn't have done it without you at my side through it all, Miss Susato. Oh. Your kind words mean so much to me. It really was a very splendid show, that, Naruhodo. I'd have thought you'd be smiling from ear to ear, but you look rather glum. Well, of course I'm delighted about the verdict. But in exposing the truth, I'm afraid I've caused my client a great deal of pain. I'm really not sure that's what a lawyer ought to be doing. Oh well, in that case, I'm quite sure that when you see Lord Van Ziek's smiling face, everything will seem much better. About that. Miss Susato, everything seems worse. He has a face like thunder. Oh dear, I really shouldn't have presumed. Mr. Naruhodo. Yes? Almost a year it's been now, since I first encountered you here in this very courthouse. For you to have risen to the level of excellence you demonstrated today, well, it's quite remarkable. But I exposed the most unpalatable truth you could ever have imagined in court today. I feel as though I've robbed you of something you held so dear. What was it he said? To fight those who dwell in the darkness requires at least some of us to occupy the darkness ourselves. But that was just a feeble excuse of a coward. Only those with a steadfast eye for the truth have what takes to fight the dark forces of crime. You made fine work of establishing the fact in court today. Oh. Well, thank you. What magnanimous words. I'm quite sure that Kazuma-sama would have a smile on his face this very moment if he were here. Kazuma. Oh, there he is. Not smiling either. Miss Susato. There's another face like thunder here. Oh my, and he really was here. Lord Van Zieks. Allow me to congratulate you on your acquittal. Congratulate me, or curse me. You failed to bring down the Reaper. I owe you an apology. No, it is I who should apologize. Your father, Genshin. If I had been stronger, then perhaps I made an unforgivable error of judgment. I can offer no excuse. It's not totally his fault. It was fabricated evidence, and I can offer no forgiveness. That said, I suppose you fought for justice and the truth. For that, at least, I can't withhold respect. Your words mean more to me than you could know. I will hold them dear. Kazuma-sama, I must say, there's one thing that's still bothering me. What's that? The will that Lord Clint Van Zieks wrote before his duel with my father. He got stabbed with a Western sword, right? He didn't get stabbed with a katana. A Soji's a fine detective and a hunter worthy of respect. He has agreed to honor my final two wishes. The first is that this document survives. The second, I cannot commit to paper. I have confessed my sins to my wife. May she find resolution in my death. With my eternal gratitude to my Japanese friend, I rest my quill. Clint Van Zieks. What can the second of his final wishes have been? That your father agreed to honor, you mean? I think perhaps I might be able to shed some light on that. What? Father? It was 10 years ago, as you know. The day before the execution was scheduled. I went to the prison to say my farewells to Genshin. Why aren't you putting up more of a fight, Genshin? If you'd only agree to it, Shishiro and I would gladly petition the government. We've been through this already. You don't need to worry about me. Anyway, Yujin, I have a favor to ask of you. Something of a great importance. You're one of my greatest friends, Genshin. Whatever it is, consider it done. I'm going to tell you an address. I need you to go there at once, in secret and telling no one. You should find a lady of the gentry in hiding there. A lady of the gentry. She's not in a good way, and she's with a child. The birth is imminent. As a medical man, I'd like you to attend to her, please. You're her only hope. By any chance, is the child yours, Genshin? Don't be daft. It's a favor that was asked of me by a man I knew, as his dying wish. My goodness. I swore to the man that I would help, that I would do whatever I could for his wife and his unborn child. Wait, is that Iris? But if something should happen to me, I need to ask you that same favor. You're the only person I know that I can truly rely on. What did you say? If something should happen to you? Tomorrow night, you're going to be... You never know, though, do you? What life will bring. Alright then. Tell me the address. I'll head there at once, with Shishiro and... No, not with him. Pardon? This is a favor I'm asking of you, and only you, Yujin. Right, I see. Very well then. And that's why Shelms didn't want the story published, because Iris's father was a serial killer. That very night I caught a train from Paddington to Dartmoor in Devon. I found the old house in the middle of nowhere. It was an old hunting hound lay asleep in the grounds. The poor woman was on the floor at the back of the darkened room. She was in mortal danger. I broke her waters to precipitate the labor before she weakened further, but it was a torturous birth. I did everything humanly possible for her and her child. And in the end, I was lucky enough to welcome a new life into the world. But tragically, she didn't survive. My efforts to save the mother's life were in vain. I held the healthy newborn girl in my arms and wept for longer than I care to remember. Eventually, in something of a daze, I looked around the room. There was a precious little in it, but an old travel trunk caught my eye. It had clearly been well looked after over the years, made of top-quality leather with fine stitching. But it was when I saw the emblem on the side of it that everything dropped into place. B for Baskerville. The Baskerville. You mean, the woman was the wife of Lord Clint Van Zeeks? That's right. The newborn was his daughter. But that makes no sense. Why on earth wouldn't Clint have entrusted the child to my care in that case? I was completely unaware that he even had a daughter. I suppose he didn't really have any choice. What? Well, your brother said that he'd confessed everything to his wife, so she must have been besides herself with worry for her child. If the true identity of the professor were ever to be made public, the girl would be forever branded as the daughter of the infamous mass murderer. Ah. So the only solution was to distance the young girl from the Van Zeeks family as much as possible. I don't believe it. I imagined that in his final hour, Lord Clint Van Zeeks made the obvious choice. He would have thought to himself, this Japanese man here is someone I can trust. I honored my promise to Genshin, of course. However, only a month later, I was summoned back to Japan, and without disclosing the parentage of the child, I couldn't obtain permission to take her with me. Oh, how awful. I was completely at a loss. In the end, I had to ask my great friend. I asked him if he would be a father to her. That would being Mr. Sholmes, I presume. Yes. He took one look into my eyes and agreed to it on the spot. That means that Barrick is Iris's uncle. Mr. Sholmes, he has the heart of gold. Really, all it can be said that I did for the child was to give her a name. Oh. When I'd come to Britain, I was trying to escape from the grief of losing my darling wife. So it was her name that I gave the little girl. Your wife's name, Professor Mikotoba. In other words, the name of my mother, Ayami Mikotoba. Oh. That's right, Ayami. Or in English, Iris. Iris. I had no idea. Ding dong. Ouch, Mr. Naruhodo, what's wrong? This little thing just pinched me on the behind through my trouser pocket hard. My dear fellows, can you hear me? Mr. Sholmes, is that you? Ding dong. Ouch, yes, we can hear you. You see what excessive tugging can do? Let that be a lesson to you. Mr. Sholmes, we weren't able to thank you properly before, but you were simply marvelous. Your checkmate move was a stroke of genius. Indeed it was, wasn't it? I surpassed myself, I feel. It had become apparent to me that to stop the Lord Chief Injustice would require such measures. The Lord Chief Injustice. Runo, Susie. Oh, Iris. Oh, I'm so pleased. What a wonderful outcome. Her Majesty Queen Vicky said she thought that my special blend was delicious. Oh, I'm sure she did. After all, no one brews a more delicious tea than you do, Iris. Let's have a party to celebrate. And Mr. Reaper, you simply must come too. What? I'm afraid I couldn't. The Reaper of the Bailey, flustered by a 10-year-old girl. Again. No. Really? Oh, poo. But I give you my word that I shall present myself at your residence in the near future to express my gratitude. Oh, how lovely. You've promised now I won't let you forget Bye for now, then. Alright, Iris, thank you for all your help earlier. Oh, that was nothing. Just come back home soon. One final pinch goodbye, was it? Well, I think I ought to be leaving. Lord Van Zeeks, would you care to accompany me? Certainly. Mr. Naruhodo, allow me to once again to express my deep gratitude to you. I believe you saved my life. Wait, Lord Van Zeeks. Yes? What are you intending to do now? Well, clearly, I shall have to resign from the prosecutor's office. Oh no. Why? I intend to publicize the full truth about the Professor case. Once that's done, the Van Zeeks family will be ostracized completely from London society. Surely not. So as soon as I am free from my employment, I shall leave the capital. Oh, I see. Don't be a fool. Are those the actions of a man once feared as the mighty Reaper of the Bailey? I beg your pardon? For the past 10 years, you've endured that pseudonym and been cast as one of the dark forces yourself. Now that you've finally been freed from that disrepute, your battle is just beginning, surely. Well, I certainly never expected to hear those words from your lips. I waited a very long time to come to London. Now I'm properly here. I intend to learn all that I can. Anyway, goodbye for now. Ryunosuke Naruhodo. Kazuma Soji. It seems as though he's really matured suddenly. He's not the only one who's matured, Mr. Naruhodo. Well, I think we should make our way back to Baker Street. We must help Iris with tonight's dinner. We must. It was then that I came to an important decision about my future. 4th November, 6:25 p.m. Shom's, suite. I'm home. Oh, Gina. About time you got here. We've been waiting ages, Otto. What are you doing with that colorful piece of history? It's a party, innit? It's gotta go off with a bang. I mean, fireworks, ideally. But when you ain't got fire, smoke's the next best thing, ain't it? There's a girl on Fresno Street who could help you with that, I think. Right. I'll remember that. You don't have to reload that thing every time I speak. You really must hear this. It's quite the most extraordinary thing. I assure you it will defy your expectations. Take down every detail now, Mikatoba. The world-famous great detective, regaling his partner with the tale of his adventure. A sight to behold. Would you care to hazard a guess? Where do you suppose the fiendish runaway had concealed himself? Would you believe? Inside the trunk I found abandoned in his cabin. I believe it, yes. I say, Mikatoba, I detect not a hint of surprise, because he was there. I wonder why that is, Maybe because I was there at the scene as well. Shomes. What? You were? Then why the deuce didn't you say so before? Not quite the sight I was expecting to behold, but still. It's hard not to feel privileged to see it. Hello, Mr. Shomes, Professor Mikatoba. I'm finally back from the Bailey. And not a moment too soon. A feast prepared by Iris and Miss Susato awaits. I must say, I haven't seen Susato looking so happy in a very long time. Runo, there you are. Dinner is on the table, everyone. Please do come and take a seat. Time to fill me boots. Goodness, is that really true, Gina? Yup, I'm losing me coppers clobbers and going back to what I know best. It's a diver's life for me. You're really leaving the police force? But why, Ginny? Well, the boss ain't around no more, so... Oh. And anyway, no matter how hard I try, that Reaper ain't never gonna accept a diver turned dick, is he? Well, people can change, you know. Ah, yes. That reminds me. I rather thoughtfully offered to relieve the bailiff of this now defunct piece of evidence. Eh? It's the inspector's pocket watch, and the crown has been reattached. That watch was his pride and joy, a symbol of his great achievements at Scotland Yard. For 10 years without fail, it measured every second of the man's remarkable career. But now, it stopped. Someone needs to keep the memory of Inspector Gregson's career alive by taking on the great responsibility of winding that watch every single day again. Yes, someone with equally fierce detective spirit. It's gotta be me. There ain't no one else. Quite right. I mean, after all, the boss was... Well, he was my boss. Yes, Ginny. Yes, he was. Oh yeah, and I made you a promise and all, didn't I, Iris? That I'd become a proper detective one day and track down your old man. Oh? Alright then, it's decided. I'll do it. And I swear, I'll find your dad and bring him, in kitchen and screaming. Well, I think we know who the dad was at this point. I'm not entirely sure that would be appropriate. Yes, I think, Gina. It might be best to, well... I think I'd like you to forget that promise, Ginny. Eh? Iris? Well, obviously, I've always wondered about who my real daddy is. Of course I have. I wanted to know where I've come from. I thought it might tell me something about myself. But I've caused such a lot of trouble trying to find out for so many people. Hurley, Runo, Professor Mickey. Oh no, not at all, my dear. Really, you owe no apology to anyone. Well, anyway, I've decided to give up on it, because I finally realized my daddy is the greatest in the world. I don't think it matters what his name is or where he's from. Don't you agree, Hurley? With every word, Iris. Thank you, Hurley. Thank you, Daddy. I think Mikotoba. Yes, Sholmes? I think that I had expressed my gratitude to you. Oh. For 6 years, you and I solved many mysteries together. And during that time, I remember countless expressions of gratitude for our good services. But a moment ago, I heard the most pleasant expression of gratitude of them all, and I should never have experienced it, were it not for you. You old softy, Sholmes. But I must confess, it's a weight off my mind to hear you say it. Well then, I think this calls for a lengthy violin recital, wouldn't you say? Oh, well, the food would go cold. That's the only problem. Maybe next week, Hurley. Are you sure a week is long enough, Iris? Even amidst the most troubling of cases, even reeling from the most shocking of revelations, returning in the evening to this suite of rooms, there's always warmth and happiness to be had. The home of the world's greatest detective, and my home too, with my greatest family. 4th November, 9:37 p.m. Naruto's legal consultancy. This attic room has been my home and office for almost a year now. I've certainly had some unforgettable experiences whilst I've lived here. But I think now, the time has come. Time to bid this place farewell. Naruhodo. Oh, Professor. Are you alone? I didn't hear any sound from Suzato's room. Yes, Suzato-san went out after dinner. She took a carriage. Something about an important matter she needed to take care of. Ah, I see. I wanted to thank you for what you did earlier. Oh? With Iris, I mean. When the subject of her father came up. Lord Clint Van Zeeks. I made up my mind many years ago never to tell her who her real father was. It's what was agreed with Genshin after all. Lord Clint Van Zeek's final wishes before he died, you mean? Yes, I've had to take some rather drastic steps at times to protect that secret, you know. Calling Suzato back to Japan 6 months ago, for example. That's why. When I read Sasaki-san's report about his final days in London, my heart nearly stopped. You stumbled across the crux of that terrible case. The dog's collar. That's why he called her back. The description of the Baskerville insignia left me in no doubt. Baskerville. If you decide to investigate that insignia sooner or later, you'd have made the connection to the Van Zeeks. And to make matters worse, Suzato knew of the unpublished story as well. The story that Iris had written based on my notes from the time. Ah yes, the Hound of the Baskervilles. Exactly. It was a work of fiction, but based on the grim reality of a huge beast of a dog being used as a murder weapon. A dog with the Baskerville family emblem around its neck. Armed with those two clues, I feared you and Suzato might arrive at the truth. So I invented that story about having collapsed to justify her leaving London and returning to Japan at once. All in aid of halting any investigations you and she might have been contemplating. I see. Something I've never understood is why Suzato-san came across that manuscript in Japan, though. You know, Iris is the Hound of Baskerville story, I mean. Sholmes sent it to me. That was before Suzato left Japan. He was very troubled about what should be done about it, you see. I'd rather and carelessly left it on my desk, which is where Suzato came across it, of course. Ah. It was the only case Sholmes and I ever pursued that I didn't record in meticulous detail. I was stunned when I discovered that young Iris had pieced together so much of it from my paltry notes. Sholmes and I discussed the matter and decided that we couldn't allow the story's publication. At that point, I returned the manuscript by post to Sholmes for safekeeping. So you did all that to stop Iris from finding out the truth about her father. That's right, because Sholmes had told me how astute she'd become. However, having witnessed events in court today, I must say my opinion has somewhat shifted. Oh? I think, at some point in the future, the time will come for Iris to know the truth. And when it does, well, I believe it will be for the best. I think so too. Actually, Professor, I wanted to talk to you about something too. Judging from that expression, I'd say you've come to a decision, have you? Yes, I have. I will be returning with you to Japan. Are you quite sure? I'm really only here as a substitute for Kazuma. But he's here in Britain now, as originally intended. Locum student Naruhodo doesn't really have a right to stay, I think. I see. Looking back now, when I first arrived here in February, my becoming a lawyer just seemed to be the way things turned out. With Kazuma, Suzato-san, and Mr. Sholmes all gently pushing me in that direction. I spent the best part of a year immersed in this world, but always aware of a seed of doubt inside me. Until today. Standing in that courtroom earlier, all doubts vanished from my mind. I was totally focused. I was sure of my belief in my client, and I was sure I could see the trial through. And at the end of it, I finally realized. No one else chose this path for me. I chose it myself. The path of a defense lawyer, eh? Yes, that's what I am now. That's what I'll be, going back with you to Japan as. And that's the path I'll be following for the rest of my life. Well, it sounds like you've made quite a resolution there. That's why it's called the Resolve of Ryunosuke Naruhodo. I have. Very well, then. I must say, it's extremely welcome news. I shall make arrangements for your return first thing tomorrow, but I don't imagine we'll depart for a few days. Not with the symposium having been cancelled now. Such a shame. Never mind. I'm sure there'll be other opportunities in the future. Well, then, I'll bid you a good night. Oh, there's Susato. Susato-san. I just wanted to let you know I'm back. Did you, hear what your father and I were discussing? I'm sorry, I did, yes. I couldn't help, but... Oh, how much did you hear? Well... From the part about Iris's real father, I think. In other words, from the beginning. So you've made up your mind. You'll return to Japan and continue working as a defense lawyer. Ah, yes. I'm sorry. I really should have consulted you about it. I did want to earlier this evening, actually, but you'd already gone out. Oh no, that's quite alright. I already knew that it's what you decide, Naruhodo-san. You did. Susato-san? Ah, yes? I suppose this means it. Has to be a farewell soon. I suppose. You'll be a great help to Kazuma going forward. I mean, I know he's a brilliant lawyer, but he's new to the British courtroom. He'll certainly benefit greatly from having a brilliant judicial assistant at his side. I'll do my very best. I wish I could say it, but I just can't. I can't ask her to come with me. After all, he was always supposed to be coming to Britain as Kazuma's assistant. It's growing late. We should both try to get some sleep. I'm sure you must be exhausted after today. Oh, yes. You're right. Before I retire, let me just say one more time. You really were quite splendid in court today. So if you ask me, anyone who thinks of you as a substitute or a locum should be ashamed of themselves. Susato-san. Thank you. November, 5:42 a.m. Port of Dover, Quayside. I can't believe this day's finally come. You're really leaving then, Runo? I'm afraid so, Iris. Thank you so much for everything. I don't know what I'll do without your wonderful cooking and delicious tea. Oh, I wish you weren't going. But you have to come back and visit, say you will. Of course. I promise. Well, it was a very brief reunion, but it was a pleasure to pursue a case with you again after so long. For a while at least, it felt like old times. Yes, I suppose on reflection, there's something to be said for it. Having a little fun once in a while. I'll just go and say goodbye to the professor as well, I think. Alright, Iris, you do that. Oh, there's Susato.
I've just checked, Naruhodo-san. Your luggage is already on board. Such a beautiful morning. Perfect for embarking on a journey, isn't it?
Before I set off, I'd just like to say how thankful I am for everything you've done for me. And give my warmest regards to Kazuma, please.
Actually, I think you ought to give him your regards in person, don't you?
Sorry?
Ryunosuke.
Kazuma! What are you doing here?
Do you really think I'd miss my best friend's departure?
Thanks. To be honest, I'd been looking forward to our wild time tearing up the streets of Her Majesty's capital, but,
Well, we'll have to save that for another time. Personally, I'm looking forward to facing you in court again.
Me too. But, we're both defense lawyers, so,
I'm going to become a prosecutor.
Oh.
I'll stay in Lord Van Zeek's tutelage for the time being, but before long, I intend to be just as formidable as the Reaper himself.
Oh.
Oh, I see.
Actually, Ryunosuke, I have a favor to ask.
Name it.
I'd like you to take care of this for me for a while.
Karuma? Why?
Because I've seen it now. I've seen what's inside me, the demon that reared its ugly head that day. It was only for the briefest of moments. The last time I came face to face with that inspector, but it was unmistakable. I wanted to kill him. I've always known there are demons that live inside people. And now I know there is one in me. The fact that it very nearly consumed me is something I'll carry with me until the end of my days. While I devote my life to fighting those whose demons have got the better of them. As a prosecutor.
So, that's what you've resolved to do, is it?
Until I'm ready to face the demon within me. To slay it once and for all. I leave this in your care.
That's when he slashed Inspector
If
Gregson's
you'll
trunk.
take it.
Of course I will. I'll keep it by my side. Always. Until we meet again, then. You have your path to follow, and I have mine.
Naruhodo-san? The path you're going to follow from now on, I wonder if I might follow it at your side, unless I'd be a burden.
What?
So she
I
wants
mean,
to come with Ryunosuke.
I would very much like you to come with me.
So how ironic is this that at the end of the game there's actually dialogue?
But aren't you...
You're so predictable, Ryunosuke.
I am?
Honestly, you never change at all. But that's what I like about you.
You mean you knew about this?
It was the evening after Lord Van Zeek's trial came to an end. She came to see me at the prosecutor's office.
Really? or when I had that conversation with Professor Mikotoba.
So, you'd go with Ryunosuke back to Japan?
Yes. I know it's unfair of me to follow my own interests like this.
Coming here especially to tell me. You're a stickler for etiquette, aren't you? Well, what are his feelings?
We've never discussed it, of course, and Naruhodo-san has made no such suggestion. I worry that perhaps I'd be a burden to him.
He's just as much of a stickler for etiquette as you are. He'd never say anything before he was asked. But I'd feel happy knowing you were with him. Look out for him on my behalf, will you?
Of course.
Susato-san.
What do you think, Naruhodo-san?
With you by my side, no trial would seem too daunting. So if you're willing, I'd be honored if you'd come with me. Together we can take on the world.
I'm terribly incompetent, but if you'll have me, I'd be delighted.
Oh, no, not at all. If anyone's terribly incompetent, it's me.
Ah! What's wrong?
Your luggage, Susato-san. There's no time. The ship's going to set sail any minute now.
It's all right. There's no need to worry. As it happens, my luggage is already on board too.
It is?
Your fine judicial assistant has everything in hand as always, I see.
Bruno! Your ship's about to leave!
What a beautiful
Time to go,
ending.
then. Look after yourself, Ryunosuke.
Kazuma, draw your sword.
That's so cool.
One day, when our paths cross, once more, we'll fight a duel of words across the courtroom. A day I eagerly await as a lawyer.
I've been waiting to hear you say that, partner.
Don't forget me then,
Oh,
Kazuma.
the sun's coming up.
As if I could, Ryunosuke.
And Mr. Sholmes, thank you so much. I'm very much indebted to you.
So these are all the characters' real accents.
Indeed, Mr. Naruhodo. I believe you are.
I'll never forget all you've done for me during my time in London.
Quite. I should like to think you will remember your debt of gratitude. Especially when I visit you in your country. What? The truth is, although many are ignorant of the fact, the world is far smaller than most folk realize.
Well, I'd be delighted if you came to Japan one day.
There's gotta be a third game. I wanna see Sholmes in Japan in a third game.
Oh yes! Would welcome you with open arms, Mr. Sholmes. Oh, that sounds wonderful! I can't wait!
In that case, let us conclude that this is to be merely a brief parting, my dear fellows.
And that brings us to the end of my adventures in Great Britain. A peculiar twist of fate brought me halfway around the world those many months ago. But that was just the start of my journey. Who knows where fate will lead me next? Still, I'm confident this won't be my last meeting with the friends I've made in London. and when we are together again. No doubt the first words I'll hear will be...
Objection. Huh? Is that it?
Come, the game is afoot.
The ship, with our friends from the east, sailed steadily towards the distant horizon. But Sholmes' face was alight with joy. The times may change, but a steadfast friendship will remain true, Wilson. We have but to gently close our eyes, and we are with our companions once more.
So I do just that. And when I do, I can hear his strong, familiar voice ring out.
Objection!
Objection.
Until we meet again, Runo.
And that's it. 40 parts. The longest playthrough that I've ever done on this channel is the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. I had so much fun with this playthrough. I did. I even got the outfit for it. I loved the original Ace Attorney games, and I've been so happy they made this one. I've been thoroughly inundated with, but I'm no purveyor of electrical goods, and what of the promised close court secrecy? Anyway, I've decided that an absence from London is in order. A sojourn in distant climes. The Empire of Japan, perhaps. I understand that wardrobe class incurs no chains whatsoever. I gave a little note to Hurley the other day. It just said, "Thank you for everything, Daddy." But it made Hurley cry. And I gave him some lotion I'd invented as well, to dye his hair. But he said that might make him cry too, so I'd rather not use it. Great way to do the credits. In those days, when I was known as the Reaper, I felt your presence at my side. Once, unable to bear the burden of the grim pseudonym, I even retired from the courtroom. Despite everything, I still wear your prosecutor's badge with pride. But the darkness that once beset me is no more, as you too are no more. In the words of a young foreign friend of mine, I must stride forward, toward a brighter future. That's the last time that we see Van Zieks, then. The boss left a note for me, you know, and I can read every letter now, A to Z, the old lot. It's clear to load of stuff up. The boss was trying to protect me, see? And that's exactly what me and Chief Inspector Toby are gonna keep doing for Londoners. I only wish I could have said how grateful I was before he, you know. And that's the last time that we see Gina, then. Gina, the truth is, I'm not the upstanding fellow you think I am. You might be a diver at heart, but it's a good heart. You've reminded me I need to be true to myself. I've got one more job to take care of before it's ta-ta to London town for the foreseeable. And then, I've got to complete your education in the art of detection. And so that's Gregson's final note before he died. Oh, it's ouch, Your Excellency. This man is accused of illegal entry into the office of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Objection. Overstatement overruled. The minister has been detained in Britain Who is this catfish counsel for the defense? And women are forbidden to enter the courtroom. Oh, really? My friend Sasato-san is in the British courtroom all the time and doing a wonderful job. What's going on here? Perhaps I should have engaged the services of a regular legal team. Huh. So he was the defendant? And Natsume was helping her? Or Natsume was the lawyer? Mama, is it true about Japanese people? Are they experts at filleting corpses? Yes, they are. Fish corpses, on the whole. I'd like to hone my own filleting skills. You don't mind, do you, Mama? Yes, I do. I'm not a corpse yet, am I? No, and I'm glad. Here I am again in Great Britain on the invitation of my dear old university friend. So he returned. He sent me a very nice letter saying he'd like to show me around, now that everything was settled. But what have I done? I was so excited I picked this splendid hotel. Now I can't afford the bill. Oh, Barrack, come to my rescue again, please. I wish I could just vanish into thin air sometimes. It's nice how all the characters have their own little, like, epilogues and you get to see what happened to them. When I went to make the waxwork impression of the killer in the cemetery, I realized what had happened. But even in the witness stand of the highest court in the land, I could never speak of it. The Lord Chief Justice and I had struck a bargain, you see. For a fateful reproduction of the visage, there is nothing we Tuspels would not do. Hey, everyone calls me gossip. I sell jauntry to passerbys, you know. Hey, everyone calls me a Pepino, and I sell the spaghetti. It's more red than my head. Everyone, they call me Non. I cannot do it. This is ridiculous. Now, the reason that Vigil is in jail is because he impersonated Gregson. Oh, Dally, how charming. You've made lots of new friends here, I see. Yes, and when we're released, we're all going to strike it rich together. So they're all gonna be working together. The two guys that abducted him, ironically, they all became friends. When I was accepted on the foreign study tour, I knew exactly what path I had to take. And however it might have ended, I knew that I wanted you there to see it. If it ended in the dock, there's no one I would have rather had defending me. But now, thanks to you, there's a new path I want to take. I'm sure we'll meet again in the courtroom, my friend. Until then, I leave Karuma in your care. And that's the last time we see Kazuma. I've made some tea, Naruhito-san. It's important that you rest whilst you can. Once we arrive in Japan, you shall be busy establishing your new office. I'm so delighted to be accompanying you. After all, your talents have been recognized by a great detective. Because you really are the greatest of lawyers. A great ace attorney, some might say. That's what the game was called, the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. What a great final picture there. And so these are the credits, just like in the first game when we completed the 5th case. I really hope there's a 3rd game. I hope that Capcom doesn't abandon this series, because there was 2 games in this one, so I hope there's a 3rd one. I really hope to see another game one day. I'd like to see this in Japan now, because we had 2 cases in Japan, the first case in the first game and the first case in the second game. But I'd like to see it, I'd like to see it now in Japan, because Naruhodo was supposed to reform Japan's legal system, so now there's probably going to be a jury. And so, I wonder how we'll see the, if we'll see Japan in the 3rd game, because I'd really like to see that. And I'd like to see Shomes arrive too, and what kind of crazy more cases we got. But I had so much fun with this game. I love this game so much. It was such a great and awesome game. It truly was. This is definitely my favorite game of 2021. Of all the games that came out this year, this is my favorite game. This one, definitely. I love this game so much, and I love playing this game for you guys. I had so much fun with playing this game. And though I didn't get that much views on this playthrough as I did on some of my other games that I've played, but you know, I didn't go crazy over the views. I still played it because I was passionate about this game and I enjoyed this game, and a lot of you guys that watched this really did enjoy it, and I had a good amount of people actually subscribed to me from this series when I was checking the analytics. A lot of you guys found me through this, but if you're new to my channel, I do, you know, dress up typically as the characters in the games that I play. This is a very different game than I normally play. I normally play a lot of action games, some shooters and stuff like that, but this was a very different one. But I really like detective games and stuff like that, and so, you know, the reason I like this game a lot, because I studied law. You know, I have a bachelor's degree in law enforcement technology. I was going to be a detective. That's what I was initially going to be. And I was also considering being a prosecutor, possibly one day. That's what I was actually considering doing. But I ended up doing YouTube, which I don't regret at all. YouTube, I enjoy YouTube a lot, and I love doing YouTube. You know, it doesn't come with the stress of, you know, being a prosecutor or a detective in real life. Definitely. But, you know, that was going to be my career field. And so a lot of people, you know, I've seen some people that have hated on this series, unfortunately, you know, posted some mean comments saying that this game sucks, but they don't understand how much this game meant to me and how much I like this game. So that's one of the reasons that I like this game, because I studied law. You know, I didn't study the courtroom a lot. I studied more of the, you know, criminal law. You know, stuff like that, police investigations and stuff like that. I was going to be a detective. That's what I initially wanted to be. You know, you got to be a regular police officer if you want to be a detective one day, but I was considering being a detective and also considering being a prosecutor one day, but didn't end up doing it and did YouTube instead. But that's one of the reasons that I really enjoyed this game. And for people, you know, that didn't hear me on some of my other parts, is this game realistic to real trial? No. There's a lot of things that are unrealistic in this game, like the witnesses testifying at the same time, multiple witnesses, you know, the fabrication of evidence constantly, the random outbursts, there's a lot of things here. The fact that there's so many people involved that have a personal connection to the case, jury members, prosecutors, lawyers, all have a personal connection to the case. You know, a lot of that stuff wouldn't be happening in real life, but, you know, it was done for entertainment. But I'm not complaining, because the story was amazing. The story was really good in this game. It was a really good story, definitely. This game was even longer than Red Dead Redemption 2, I think. I know I can't compare it in that regards, it's a completely different game, but the only other game that I played that was this long was Red Dead Redemption 2, and this game is definitely that length. So thank you, Capcom, for making this marvelous game. This game came out in 2017 originally, for people that are wondering. It came out in Japan only, and there was only a Japanese version, but they finally released an English version 4 years later. And that's what I was playing. And now, with the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles selling, you know, worldwide, you know, hopefully, now, we get a 3rd game now. I would really like to see one. So please, if anybody from Capcom ever sees this, please make a 3rd game, because I would love to play a 3rd game. I'd love to do it on the channel as well. Had so much fun with this game. And I'm assuming that's it here. The Great Ace Attorney 2 Resolve. Finn. That's it there. So we've brought down the evil in the court. We've stopped Lord Strongheart. We've gotten justice. And also, guys, another thing. There's a chance this game might be turned into an anime. There's a very strong chance in that. because the original Ace Attorney games, they were turned into an anime, and the anime followed very closely the cases in the game, and so I'd love to see an anime out of this game. That's it then. That's the end of the game. Thank you guys for watching this series. I hope that you guys really did enjoy this. I know this was probably the longest part that I'm putting up. This is going to be probably over 4 hours. But thank you guys for watching. I hope that you guys enjoyed this part, and I hope you guys enjoyed this series. And, you know, if you think that other people will like my series, share my series with other people. I would greatly appreciate that. And if you did enjoy my series, please do drop a like. And, you know, if you like me as a YouTuber and you're new to my channel, please do subscribe, because it does mean a lot to me and does help me out. So thank you guys for watching. I'm currently doing Saints Row, and I'm gonna have the Dark Pictures House of Ashes coming up as well. So thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care, everyone.